If we could start with a moment of silent prayer, please. Thank you. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can call to order, please.
Mr. Benton?
Here.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes. At this point, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Dixon.
Yes, Tim, thank you very much. At this time, before we get into the meat of the meeting, I thought it would be good to have our principals introduce the new candidates who are here that you'll be voting on later in the meeting. So we thought we'd take this opportunity to do that. Mr. Busenberg, would you introduce Mr. Beers, please?
Sure. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Andrew Beers. He is the candidate we're recommending for the Education Arts program. We are thrilled to have a candidate of his caliber. He's a graduate of Otterbein University, where he majored in studio art with a concentration in photography. Then went on to California Institute of the Arts, where he earned a Master's of Fine Arts in Film and Video. And he is graduating soon with a Master's in Art Education from NYU. So his references are
And Andrew, if I could ask you to step up to the lectern with the mic, that'd be wonderful. Mic on the right, please. Yes, please.
Gotcha.
You're live.
All right, cool. Nice to meet you all. Like Derek said, I'm from the area, I'm from Dayton, Ohio, Bellbrook area. Bounced around, went to Otterbein, spent some time in California, New York, but I'm just really happy to be back. My fiance and I just recently moved to Columbus. We're really excited to get our lives started here and set some roots down. Yeah, I'm super excited for this program. I'm really happy about all the technology that's coming in and the potential to really get kids engaged in a different artistic and technical way. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I must say, during the process, the committee met and was able to watch him teach a class to students here in our high school, and did a phenomenal job. So thank you, Mr. Bailey. Thanks for the work of the committee that put in a lot of hours interviewing and coming to this conclusion. And we wish you well, Andrew. Thank you. Mrs. Smith, would you please stand and introduce our new music teacher for the elementary? And perhaps Cindy Boston, if she's... Okay, good deal.
I think we'll start with more of a global and we'll go with local here. But Cindy Watson is obviously a parent of 4 students that attend all the different schools. I think you're not going to everything. I do. Yes. So we've had the pleasure of knowing her as a parent for years. She began subbing for us. She did long-term sub last spring, which started right about the time that the school shut down. She got to be an online substitute teacher. And then started the year as another long-term substitute. And then was hired, hired for this semester for our return daily program. And so when Mr. Franks decided to resign, he was also then asked for their job that she's been doing, but it asked when I'm available. I checked her references. We were teammates, and she was legit. But I also did an observation of her in the classroom. Very positive. We are thrilled. Candidate for Franklin.
You're wonderful.
Is it on?
Yes, it is.
So, okay. Well, my name is Cindy Boston, and as Mrs. Smith said, I've lived in Johnstown for almost 18 years now. Before that, my hometown is Worcester, Ohio, and I went to Ohio State and Wittenberg University, where I got my education degree, and then my master's degree is from Nova Southeastern University in Teaching and Learning, and I'm super excited for this opportunity and feel very blessed to been given the opportunity to be the long-term sub now and also fourth grade teacher in the future. Yeah. But he enjoyed the lesson.
So hello, I'm Allison Gilliland. I am a 2019 graduate from Capital University. I am from I am from Port Clinton, Ohio, so that's where my parents still live, which is right on Lake Erie. And currently I am teaching at Upper Scioto Valley Schools, which is in the Lima Bell Fountain area, a pretty small district. Last year I was hired to be the K-5 elementary music teacher and the choir teacher for 712. This year, my job's a little different. They added band on top of that. So currently I'm doing kind of the job of 3 people, and I'm looking to, or I guess I am coming to Johnstown to settle in back into Columbus, get back into my roots, which is elementary music education, and really grow this program. So thank you.
And lastly, but certainly not least, board, I'd like to introduce you to David Jenny. Some of you may already know him, been a member of this community for a long time. David is being recommended to you this evening as our new facilities manager. We're excited to recommend him and excited that he's chosen to come on board with us. Dave's background in the military was exceptional, and thank you, Dave, for your service. We appreciate that. Has degrees in electrical and electronic engineering, and various jobs as project manager for one for a private company, and currently with Smoot Construction as a project manager. So Dave, we welcome you and would love for you to just say a couple words here.
First of all, thank you to the board for the opportunity. So very much looking forward. I'm quite excited about the opportunity to give back a little bit to the district that you all were given to me. So I've had 5 kids graduate from Johnstown-Monroe over the number of years. And when the opportunity came up, I jumped on it. When I heard the position was available, I think I sent my resume to Dale the next day. So anyway, I'm quite excited for the opportunity to assist, keep the facilities at a very high level and continue to do that, and also help out with the construction projects. So everybody's been welcoming and very gracious, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Dave. And I really want to thank the members of the committee, the Buildings Ground Committee, Alan and Ann, so much for the time that you took. And there was a lot of time involved in reviewing and meeting with candidates. And thank you. We appreciate it, as well as the principals. I know this is a long process, reviewing all the applications and resumes and making calls and vetting out candidates. It takes a lot of time. And so I just want to say thank you tonight to all of you. And I'm very, very pleased with our pool of candidates being recommended to you this evening. With that, I will also tell those who are here, the candidates, while you're welcome to stay for the meeting, you don't have to. I know space is a little tight tonight, so if you have something pressing and you don't want to stay, then I just feel welcome to stay. But if not, don't feel compelled to stay. Okay? Thank you.
All right, do we have any announcements of visitors? We're good.
This is me.
For sure. Oh,
I
there you
didn't
are.
think.
You were hiding behind Cindy there. I didn't see you.
And the masks, good stuff.
Alice, come on up.
First of all, I'd like to say it's really nice to see all these new hires. It really does my heart good, and the credentials are wonderful, and welcome to Johnstown, to all of those that are new. I hope you'll forgive me. Tonight I prepared what I wanted to say because I wanted to make sure I got it all set. So what I have is what I consider an open letter to Johnstown schools, our board, the administrators, staff, and students. So if you'll bear with me, I want to read this to you. As many of you know, I have a long history with Johnstown-Monroe schools, beginning when I entered first grade here. Through the years, Johnstown-Monroe schools have had many successes and faced many challenges. None, in my opinion, compare with the intensity and the duration of this global pandemic that began early in 2020. I do not think that there is a family in the United States, likely even on this planet, that has not experienced changes in our way of life. And uncertainty is likely near the top of that list. What I want to address tonight is the courage, strength, and hard work of this school district in the face of uncertainty. In March of 2020, the physical school doors were closed, and it was shocking to me how quickly that happened. The future left a sick feeling in the pit of every teacher and every parent's stomach. But Johnstown found a way to get the doors open virtually. Academics and learning was and continues to be a priority of Johnstown schools. Because I have a daughter who teaches in this district and grandsons who attend it, I saw firsthand the time that it took to adjust to this new way of learning for everyone. But you did it. And for that, I am profoundly grateful for your courage and your hard work. And I'm speaking to everybody that's here and not here. And then, before we knew it, it was August and time to begin all over again. What would this year look like? Would our children even get to attend school, or would they be relegated to a computer screen, lacking any personal contact? I cannot tell you how proud I am of the way Johnstown schools handled this great challenge. You took the risk, made the necessary safety precautions, opened our doors, and you provided options for parents who were tentative. Bravo to everyone. A few short weeks ago, I had the opportunity to attend Johnstown's high school musical, Newsies. As I have come to expect, it was no run-of-the-mill performance. It was stellar. But what was more amazing to me that it even happened at all. The students and staff made that happen. Earlier in the year, our football team made it to the high school playoffs. Our basketball team made it deep into Ohio's state tournament, and the Big Red Band had its annual varsity show. I know that I've missed many accomplishments, but you get the point. Johnstown-Monroe Schools School Board, administrators, teachers, support staff, students, and parents set an example for success, and the children of this district are the beneficiaries. This year was not lost for them, as is the case for so many children across our nation. I've always been proud to be a Johnny, and I've always known that our school district is a pearl right in the middle of Ohio. But as I come before you tonight, this is the most proud I've ever been. You kept our schools open. Our beautiful new buildings do not matter much if they are empty, but they are not. I think I speak for our community when I say thank you for all of your hard work, your diligence since this pandemic began. You are greatly appreciated for teaching our greatest national treasures, our children. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I don't know if this is worthy of board minutes, but I have a copy for you. If you don't want to type it, I can send it to you. Anyway, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dixon, you want to move on to our student program highlights?
Certainly. Tonight we have 3 presentations for you. I'd like to call upon, first of all, our technology committee that has been meeting and discussing the need for Chromebook devices. And I know the board's had many questions over several meetings, and we've been discussing this at length. And so I thought it best that we have the committee members come and present relative to how these devices being proposed to you this evening might be used. So,
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. The Technology Committee did meet on March 16th of this year, and a big part of our discussion and the main topic was one-to-one devices in the elementary school. So as Mr. Dixon indicated, we did invite those principals and teachers to share this evening about how those devices would be used in each grade level.
Well, thank you for having us. As Mr. Dixon and Mrs. Sykes have said, we do have members from the Technology Committee, and we're going to start with the Primary Learning Center, or K2 Primary Learning Center on the first floor. And I'd like to introduce the Technology Committee members, because we talk a lot about the Technology Committee, but I want to make sure you know who represents the committee on the first floor. We have Autumn Clark, who is a second grade teacher, and Sherry Atkins, who is a first grade teacher. And ironically, they are both teaching remotely this year as well. And then I've also invited Katie Schaefer, who is here as our kindergarten rep, just for the purpose of answering any questions if you have them specifically at what that might look like in the kindergarten grades. So prior to the Technology Committee meeting, we did meet in our team meetings, and they are here to represent the culmination of everything that their teams came up with. So I'm going to turn it over to them. They're going to present to you.
Nice. Hello. Okay, so I'm not going to read to you. I think you're all capable of reading. So we're going to pull out a few highlights. Let me first start by saying I have been on the Technology Committee since I have been hired. I can't remember if it was the first year that it was established, so almost 10 years, or if it was the year after, so 9 years, but it's been a while. So, and I will be the first to admit that thinking of one-to-one at the elementary level, especially K2, was never something that I thought was feasible or necessary. However, given the last few years and just knowing how technology works in our current circumstances, I do think that there are some great benefits. And so I do stand before you having learned that there are some great things. And it's not about using technology more and putting students in front of the technology more. It's about making better use of the technology. And so I think one-to-one we are finding at K2, that is possible, that we can use the one-to-one devices, and then we can make our use of our time better, more efficient, more effective. So just want to highlight first the very first bullet point that says logging on and accessing programs can be explicitly taught. K2 is all about routines and procedures. The first several weeks are all routines and procedures. Lining up, sitting down, practice going to your locker, all those things. Having one-to-one, that would be a benefit. We would be able to instruct our students all at once and be able to allow them to see, how do we log on? Kindergarten, where's the power button? How do we turn that on? And all of those, yeah, don't touch the power button once you've turned it on. All of those things are important. I know it sounds silly, but those are super important, because if we can establish those routines and procedures early on, that's less time during our instruction that we're having to repeat those routines and procedures. So having those one-to-one devices would allow us to create those. Currently, that is done in our computer lab, which is a rotation of once every 6 days. So being able to do it in the classroom along with that would be extremely helpful, definitely more efficient, more effective. If you kind of go down a little bit, the fourth one from the bottom, assigned devices provide a sense of ownership and increase student accountability. Not just assigned devices,
but even allowing them to have a device that they're using for their own learning. So like knowing that, okay, this is my time to learn whatever it is, whether it's a flipped classroom video, whether it's a resource, whether it's research, they're taking responsibility for their ownership. Versus currently we use them in like small groups. One person's in front of the computer, the others are trying to write things down. One kid may be staring off, you're redirecting. By them being engaged, which is my other point, in their device, it's going to help, again, more efficient, more effective instruction. So we really believe that they're going to take more ownership, especially if they know that that is their device and they're responsible for it and what they're doing on it.
Okay. I was told Autumn earlier today because she was saying she's been on the committee for 10 years, and I was on the committee before there was ever a committee. So I was a technology person before there was a thing called a committee. So again, we've just pulled out a few things, and one of the ones that we're going to really focus on is the research standards can be explicitly taught, modeled, and practiced throughout the year. Currently, at least in first grade, we never even hit it till the last 9 weeks. And then I'll talk a little later about how that can take 9 weeks to complete one project. And then the other thing that was really important is testing is going to be more manageable. Okay, currently, when we're in the testing window, it can take us 3 weeks to test an entire building. And that interferes then with our intervention teachers, because then they're being pulled for 3 weeks to go and proctor and monitor. So it becomes a situation where we really feel that we can get this down to 1 week if we have one-to-one devices. And then if we have them within our classroom as teachers, we can decide, maybe I'm going to test these 10 kids this day and these 10 kids next day, and the others can be on to an iReady lesson. So everybody's going to be on the computer, but we can manage without having to pull our intervention specialists to come proctor with us. There's ways that we can find to be successful with that. That wouldn't require us constantly giving up our LLI and our title program and those other very important classes that occur during our day. And then the last thing says, it's really important, it says, we'll enhance and support the existing curriculum. We are in no way, shape, or form changing our curriculum. We're just trying to find ways to enhance what the students already do. And that's going to get into where we talk about the explicitly taught, how they be used in our classroom. I know for first grade, we always do a nonfiction animal report. And what happens is they may research 5 kids one day, but they may not get that computer back for another 4 or 5 days. Then they have to remember where they were at and pick up. Plus, I'm trying to explain the same thing 5 times each group, as opposed to just one time giving the explanation and spending a whole lot more time intervening with those kids who haven't caught on. Because, you know, when we do it in our small groups, it's like 30 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and it becomes a situation where by the time they actually finish the book and go to the publishing, because one of our standards in first grade is producing a digital tool, a book using a digital tool. So it's not like we're doing something over and above what's being asked. These are the standards that we have. So in order to do that, it'd be so ideal if they could all be on at one time, doing the same book with their own research, that I've explicitly taught them how to go on to this site. Facts for Me is what I use because there's no advertisements to it. And then going back and forth between the computer and also having some print that they can highlight some answers on. So it's not just using the computer. But now they've got the research done. They're ready to write. They write 2 sentences, maybe 3 sentences the first time because they're not really used to the program. Then they may not be on again for 3 or 4 days, and they come back and they have to remember where they left off and start again. And it really becomes a situation where it can take literally weeks for them to accomplish one research project. Whereas if we had one-to-one devices, we could start just teaching them how to research before we ever had to do the digital tool at the end, and just kind of give them more exposures and more experiences with these things. I think that was it for me.
And also on this, we wanted to talk a little bit about the whole group and independent practice, and then also extend and differentiate. So those kind of go together along with a lot of the other things that are on there. And as Sherry mentioned, we're not seeing these one-to-one devices as being basically an overachiever. It's making better what we're already doing, not replacing a lot of our paper pencil activities. For example, when I go through the writing process, I allow my students to have options. So when we get to the publishing, do they want to create a paper pencil book? Or do they want to publish on the computer? When we do research, do they want to do a PowerPoint? Well, that's really hard to do unless the student already has a prior knowledge of that, especially in second grade. And you've got some really techy second graders. But being able to tell our computer lab, hey, let's teach all of the kids how to do a PowerPoint, because when they get to this point, that's going to be an option for writing. And so it just allows us to give more options to the students. It allows us to give more options as a part of our instruction. And so that's how I'm kind of seeing that. When I think about extending and differentiating, same thing. I can teach a whole class lesson, not just with iReady testing, but I could give a quick assessment through Schoology, and then immediately I'm going to have the data to then use for the next day. Right now, if I want my students to do something on the computer as far as assessments go, I'm going to need to wait until an entire week, because all 5, now thankfully we have more computers this year. I have 1 right now because I'm JLA, but in the classrooms, thankfully you provided a lot. And so they have more devices, so it's going to take them a little bit more time, but with one-to-one, that'd be even more. It'd be quicker response. We get our data back. We can study it. We can say, okay, oh man, these kiddos, they didn't get fractions. So I'm going to use manipulatives, and I'm going to work with them in a small group. But these guys, they got it. Let's move on to equivalent. And so I can differentiate in a different way because I have the data sooner because of how I was able to do my assessments. Wouldn't always do assessments on computers. It's not always practical. It's not always what's necessary. So it allows the teacher to decide as a professional, would this be a great standard to assess on the computer, or would this be better as paper pencil? So it just allows us options. It allows the students options. So just wanted to say that. Management and care. I don't really want to spend a lot of time on this slide. I know that you guys understand. Hopefully you'll be able to see this slide if you don't already have the presentation. We understand there'll be challenges, but we, as K2, we discussed in our grade level meetings, we understand the challenges. We've already tried to problem solve and bring up solutions for the challenges that we recognize. But at this point, we really do believe that the benefits outweigh the challenges. We just have determined that. And like I said, I will say that I was not a believer in that 3 years ago. But now I'm like, yeah, there are definitely some great things that one-to-one could provide for students and for teachers in instruction. And Katie is going to finish up.
Just to wrap things up, overall, we just said it's not about what are the parts of education that a computer would do instead of a teacher. Rather, it is what are the teachers already doing or trying to do that this can help us with. We can become more efficient, and the computers would really help us with those things. So one-to-one computers can save us time and enable us to reach the students more directly and more often. So we think it's a great benefit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Next, I would like to begin by introducing the 2 technology committee representatives from the 3-5 Learning Center, and then we also have one additional member teacher here with us today. So our 2 representatives from the technology committee are Julie Smith, 4th grade math, and Amy Humke, 3rd grade. Amy's a relative newcomer to the committee, a couple of years. Julie's been doing, and Julie was an online and in-person teacher first semester. And Joan Major, 5th grade math. We asked her to come to represent 5th grade because there are some significant projects and things that happen in 5th grade that computers can really benefit in a one-to-one environment. So I wanted to make sure that they were represented. Joan also taught online and in person first semester, so she sees the use of computers from both sides as well. So we are going to begin with 3rd grade. All you have to do is give them
Okay, so for 3rd grade, one of the big things I wanted to talk about was our OST testing. And some of you are familiar with that because you've had a student that may have taken that already or will take it. If you're not familiar with it,
it would be advantageous for you to go to that testing site and see some of the things that our third graders are being asked to do when they come in the fall, and then as they leave the end of third grade in April and May. And one of the things they're asked to do is write a multi-paragraph essay. So as a third grader, when they come in, they don't even really know what a multi-paragraph essay is. That's a lot of what we focus on throughout the year, but not only then are we teaching the writing skills that go with that, we're then teaching the keyboarding skills on how to create that multi-paragraph essay. We have to tab. I kind of got a giggle because a lot of our third graders think if I put a period in and I just do a bunch of spaces, I've still indented. It's still within the same area, but it's about, okay, period, return, tab. If the tab doesn't work, you're spacing over 5 times. So it's about getting them used to the keyboarding skills as well. And that's what we spend a lot of time on from September to April, that writing process. But it's not just about doing that on the computer. They do their rough draft on a piece of paper. So we're still practicing our handwriting, and we're still writing on notebook paper and creating graphic organizers for them to then put that rough draft into a final copy. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was flipping the classroom down there towards the bottom. Flipping the classroom is a way for our students to become more autonomous learners. They can decide some of the things that they'd like to research, and having one-on-one, that provides them more opportunities to do so. And then that kind of guides our instruction, where then the teachers can come in and have a guided instruction on stuff that they've already learned themselves, things that interest them. We can create small groups to do that. It can be independent, but having that one-on-one computer allows them to do that. A lot of what everybody else has already said, some of the research projects for our social studies and science, it allows me to only have to give the instructions one time versus when we had like 5 computers and 22 kids. I was doing the same thing 7 different times because I'd have to explain those instructions on just how to get to where I wanted them to go. So the convenience of it, I'm not going to read everything up there, but those are 3 of the things that I really wanted to point out from third grade perspective.
Okay, and fourth grade, very similar. I think of it as having the computers available. You can really differentiate for the kids and individualize your instructions sometimes. It's also, there's a lot of great things out there now, especially that they've developed in this last year that are fun and motivating for kids just to take your teaching in a different direction. Be assured that the traditional resources will still be used. Even in fourth grade, they need to practice their handwriting, and in math, lining up their numbers. And I use whiteboards a lot, and writing and teacher-directed instruction will still be very, very important. But it's a way to enhance our teaching. And yeah, we came up with a very long list, I think, on both sides of how we would use them. Right now in fourth grade, we tend to try to pool our computers. So there's a lot of moving them around from classroom to classroom to get a class set, because it is definitely easier to present material and monitor the students when you have a class set to use. And especially the last couple of weeks, getting prepared for the tests, wanting to get them online more so they're more comfortable in that format. We really need all the computers every day. A lot of use for it. So, and the same types of projects you see down the line in the other grades as well. Fourth grade.
Oh. Why I'm not on the technology committee. All right, good. But rest assured, I know how to use a computer, especially after half a year of teaching online. So, yeah, a lot of the same things that other folks have said we see in fifth grade as well. I can tell you that for our reading and writing teachers, you know, the fifth graders have to write a 4-paragraph essay for the state test. So they get an hour and a half, right, to do that. Among other questions, right, that are on there, along with the reading that they have to do. And if they could text it, it would probably take them a little bit less time. But, you know, typing that on there, I know that the teachers really kind of get stressed because, you know, they want their kids to have as much time as possible to really get that essay put together on paper and get their graphic organizer and get everything lined up, and then be able to have the actual time to type it in and format it correctly. So having those computers and being able to use them on a more regular basis with the whole class and whole class setting, I think is really important. I know personally for math, there's a lot of great online math manipulatives that I would love to be able to use, have students use while I'm doing it as well on the smart board, and be able to kind of all work together, work through some of those higher level math problems with some of my students. Would be great to be able to do. What else do I have to say? Gosh, yeah, just the vocabulary assignments that we have on there. I think this year that just we have testing on our minds so much that, you know, we were able to in years past have a couple students get on computers and then have other students bring their seats around so that we could go through the process of how do you log on to the math test. And on the state test, there's a lot of different tools. So they have to be able to like plot points and then use line connectors to create two-dimensional shapes, or be able to drag and drop different things on a coordinate grid. And so having like one student doing that while two others are watching is kind of how we kind of tried to do that in years past. And this year presents a little bit more of a challenge because we can't have students that close together. So then it's, you know, it's kind of like pulling computers from different rooms and trying to make sure that we have enough so that every student can really practice those skills and feel like that we have prepared them for that test. So I think that's important.
It's very small. I apologize. Try to make it a little larger. Talking about assessment. So, you know, everything we do is not all about assessment. And I know that oftentimes you will hear that we're teaching the standards, and the standards are assessed. That's a big difference. However, we do want our students to be proficient in the format in which they have to show their knowledge. We have a obligation as educators, because we have spent years teaching our children in English arts, how to go back to the text and underline and highlight and put thinking notes in the margins. Well, now they have to know how to do that on screen because they are given a passage that they have to follow through 3 or 4 screens just to finish that passage. So in all fairness to our students, to be able to show what they know and what we have taught them, they need as much practice as possible with the instruments they're going to use to show their knowledge. So that's the first. Second, well, what's up here, the very first one is we do have students who have a real knowledge of computation. And that means on the assessment, this I'm going to read it to them to help with some comprehension. When we give an assessment to a student who has that accommodation throughout the school year, much as what to say, our intervention specialist has to pull that to their students, and maybe 4 of them, let's say, in class. We can pull them one at a time, read the entire thing out loud to them, and then pull the next one, read it out loud to them. And that's a lot of instructional time lost for that intervention specialist, a lot of time lost for those children. So we now have Schoology because the district, you know, is very forward thinking and giving us that learning system. So what we can do now, we just had this conversation here. Students who have a read aloud accommodation, if we are 1-to-1, we can take that test online and the teacher can report it ahead of time. That student who needs that accommodation now can stay in the classroom with their classmates. They can put in earbuds and they can take the intervention specialist that is supporting all students is all finished one class period, and the intervention specialist is ready to intervene and provide intervention. So it is one of those things that will allow us in we already do much more. It is paperless, so you know, we've tried. Sometimes our photocopy numbers don't show it, but we have tried to cut down on paper simply because of passing around and COVID this year. And that has been one of the great is that we've been able to do working on a computer, and this would enable us to do even more. And then the last thing is, and again, it's not all about testing, but testing is a very big part of what happens, especially this time of year. When I made the initial testing schedule this year, parents could see this one. We got together and made my writing schedule after I did the Ohio State testing schedule. And we literally were going to have somebody testing in our building every day. And what that means is it really affects the atmosphere because you have to be silent all the time. Walk through the hallways, someone else is testing. And then you have to possibly change lunch periods because that person breathes solid needs come back. And that means that the people who are helping the proctors, our title teachers, aren't providing services during that time. Intervention teachers aren't. Aides who are normally intervening doing Greek instruction and math instruction aren't because they're proctoring. So because we have purchased other laptop components for us, society was able to kind of finagle a little bit that for this testing time, we could have some kind of extras that haven't been appropriated yet to the place where they are going to go. And with those, is the one to take lunch to their computer now. We are able to do third, fourth, and fifth grade right now, testing on this space. We have cut down to 4 testing days. 4 for the Ohio State classes. That should be done. Everybody's going to be in the same testing mode, in the same days. When we're done, it's over with, and I don't think there's going to go back. Maybe groups, intervention teachers can go back and do my intervention. So excited about that. So again, it's not that we're going to be doing things that we haven't done before in terms of taking away from traditional instruction. We're just going to do what we want to do for our students. Much more.
Thank you.
Going to do an introduction for middle school. First, thank you for our devices. We love them. I'm going to be honest, there was a learning curve. So 350 students who have to plug them all in at the end of the day. So we were starting very early. When they first got their devices at 2 o'clock, we're like, okay, we have to go in groups, we have to get these plugged in. And they have it mastered now. They can missiles at 2:20, we can send them back at 2:15, and they can make it happen. First week, middle school, we won. We had the first student who tripped and cracked the corner of their device, and I thought, oh, these devices, this is not going to go well. But we haven't had an issue. It's gone very well. The kids are careful with them. The kids respect them. We are getting protocols in place as far as safety for those and what the kids are able to access on those, so that's gone well. But I did ask 2 teachers from our building to talk about how they're using the devices in their classrooms to kind of give you just a snapshot of what's happening at the middle school. So Marie Fleming is 6th grade science. Chloe Jungers is our art teacher, so they are going to share with you.
Hello, how are you guys? So many of you have had, your children have had me as teachers know that I'm kind of a hands-on. This year has been totally changing because I'm the different things on the tables, and so big adjustments for me as we were coming back. Excited that I didn't have to do online, but how can we make this engaging? Because that's what they know. They know that's what we're going to do. So I kept a lot of the things that we typically do. When we were fortunate, because I always house the laptop part, so my students use them anyways. We have purchased gizmos, and some of your students may have used those before, which is an online simulation. So it's very similar to that 8th grade test. So that has been helpful. It gives the students an option to kind of manipulate things that they might see, kind of enhances kind of what we're developing a little bit with what Carol Dunn does with engineering, some of those ideas. So that's been really worthwhile. So that's something I use. We also use Study Island. So just to kind of get those benchmarks, kind of that mid-year, we do the diagnostic at the middle of at the beginning of the year, and then do our mid-year, and to kind of see just where those gaps are once again, to kind of be able to track our students, not just on what our classroom assessments, but how they actually do when you sit down, because it's different. It's going to be different when they see like a test that I give rather than what maybe the test for what study I like my percent. Mrs. Almendinger had asked me to, what do we do that's not? I still did my sub project, which I saw on our district website. That's going to be always good to that hands-on. The learning from that is just amazing. We last week, everything's within like a 10-minute interval. So we were like, okay, we'll do a whole group instruction. Then we get into groups for like 10 minutes. We were doing density with exploration. So we're still doing a lot of that, which is paper pencil. We are still doing guided notes, paper pencil. We are having that opportunity with Schoology, which has been such a lifesaver with teaching 37 online students at the beginning of the year, as well as the 100 students that I was teaching face-to-face. That was a saving grace. Just to have that student management system with all of our quarantine. We haven't had a ton of quarantine, but with those quarantine students, that has been saving grace as well. I'm hoping as we move forward that parents will become a little more familiar so that when I'm emailing, say, hey, that attachment's there, they can download that if they forgot their homework. I think that's a training and process that is coming along, and we are truly appreciative in our building, I know, of Schoology as well. With that, with the online assessments that the elementary head spoke about, I have found that I have some students that that's still a struggle. They will fly through their tests. So I have adopted mine where sometimes we'll do online, sometimes we'll do a written. And then I've also given some of those students that we have talked to the option. And it's amazing the number of students that would rather do a paper pencil test versus an online test. So I think that little bit of option and choice in their learning and what they're comfortable with gives them those opportunities to go back and circle. And I find that their time management is better. They're a little more focused. So it's just that learning. So we have those students that aren't quite there yet with the computers. It gives them that choice so that it's not just okay, here it is, it's online, you're going to take it. Because, of course, they have that for the state test. So, that does help with that differentiation of those students with their learning styles. But they've gone well. I'm kind of an old dog, and this is new tricks for me, taking me out of my comfort zone. But I really feel like the kids have done well. It's very exciting for sixth graders. They kind of think, woo, dream time. But we, have given them engaging activities to do. And actually, the science department, we purchased curriculum, which allows us to do a lot of coding with information, and that has been very beneficial as well. So we are very appreciative of our mobile devices and looking forward to what we can take that and really include it next year. Do you have any questions on?
I do have a question. I was really happy to hear what you just said about you allow a student to take the pencil paper test versus the computer. I'm going to pose this to everybody that in all grades. Do you do that with the other students? Do you do that with your students? If you know a student is going to struggle, to me, the ability to compose a paragraph and be able to type that and to transfer the eye-hand coordination to be successful at that is a skill that may or may not be developed that early, especially in the younger grades. I see it that way. I'm still learning myself. But my point is, do you look at those students and say, well, maybe we'll do a pencil paper test today and keep up with that same method, because some kids would do well with that while others will not, or they'll do well with the tech using their computers.
Built in, that kind of gives an opportunity for that flexibility either way. Like sometimes I'll say, okay, if we do paper pencil, then let's do a reassessment online through Schoology.
So you kind of test the theories there.
Again, ultimately, we're preparing them for that next level, and eventually they're going to be taking the ACT or the SAT, and it's going to be computerized. That's where we're going. So, ultimately that's our goal. We want those kids to find success as they continue through the years. So, most certainly, giving them those options. I feel, at least for me, I can speak for my 100+ students. I give them those options.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cola Jungers, and I'm the art teacher at the middle school.
So first, thank you. Thank you so much for these computers. They have solved a major problem for me, which is, I think 3, 4, 5 spoke to it, is paper, the amount of paper we use in the art room. So let me calm anybody's worries. We still draw with paper and pencil. We still get dirty with clay. In fact, I got the prime parking spot for this meeting because I was here loading the kiln before anybody was even here. So yes, we still do the dirty stuff. There's a place in my classroom specifically to protect the Chromebooks when we do the dirty stuff, but the paper problem. Okay, so middle schoolers, as in regards to art, and maybe only art, are really interested in realism. They want everything to look real. They want it to be accurate. It's just the stage of development they're in. So constantly before we had the Chromebooks, how do I draw this kind of dog? Mrs. Jungers, can you get me an image of this Brazilian tree frog? Mrs. Jungers, I need this image. Or if we were doing landscape paintings like we're about to start, I would have to make tons and tons of photocopies of pine trees and birch trees, just so that kids would have image references to do their artwork. Now they have an entire universe of images right in front of them as they're working. And I still have a place in my classroom, which is these kind of milk crates with folders that I have the photocopies that I've saved because for some reason I feel like someday I need to use them again. But really, I have not touched them. I have not. I don't need to. And another wonderful thing, just speaking of landscapes, I can create these online folders with image references for the kids. So before, I would project these beautiful Hudson School landscape paintings to inspire them. Now I can project those images, we can talk about it together. I can have them taking notes on their Schoology account, and when later they want to say, oh, well, how did Winslow Homer paint water? They can go back into their Schoology account, see that image that I uploaded for them, and reference it within seconds, where before I had to give them a photocopied paper of websites, and we'd have to go to the lab, and then I'd have to print whatever things they wanted. Or I'd have to take their images home to my Photoshop at home, boost the contrast so the photocopy machine would have good enough images for them to replicate. So thank you. Oh my gosh. And thank you so much. You have solved a tremendous problem for me. And I think you are about to solve a second tremendous problem for me, which is how for students to bring home their artwork to their parents. I don't know why they don't do it. Some of them are great about it. I will insist, please, your parents want to see this. It's so beautiful. Please take it home. But they don't. Now they have their Chromebook with a camera right there. They could actually, they can do video reports as a group or alone, talking about the different art movements that we talk about. They can take images of their own work, email it to their parents. It is just a world of possibilities that we are just going to continue to grow at the middle school, finding new ways to use this technology in conjunction with what we're already doing. It's just making everything better for us. And so I just want to say again, thank you. We love them. So thank you so much.
I did not make a presentation. I didn't invite high school teachers. It was kind of my impression this was more about younger grades, but I'd be happy to share a little bit about kind of how we're using the devices at the high school. As you can imagine, it depends a lot on the course and the teacher, and so some students may be using their devices much more than others. We already had quite a few students who have their own devices. They needed them for college CCP classes. They needed them to type on, to create, store documents, all that sort of stuff that kids use computers for. The problem with the cart system as it was designed was we had a lot of devices in the building, but it was kind of clunky. It was inefficient. You might have a 25 in a cart. You might have 12 students in that classroom, but the teacher would reserve the cart. There wasn't a half a cart or I need 2/3, and well, I can take a third from over here and a third from over here, and by the time you wheel them around and get them on the elevator and up to a different level and through the doors, it just was not working very well. So when we realized we had just about enough devices to make it work, it was like, well, let's get these in kids' hands. So we have quite a few students who didn't take them, and quite a few students who did. When I been around a lot. It's evaluation season, so I've been in a lot of classrooms in the last month. But the thing that I noticed that almost every teacher is using them for in some capacity is formative assessment at the end of the lesson. So they will have some learning objectives. They will have teach a lesson. And at the end, they want to get some sort of feedback from students. So sometimes you can get that, just ask questions and get that back, or have them do, we call it an exit slip, where they just answer a few questions. But an electronic exit slip is so much more efficient. So it's like a Kahoot. If you've heard of Kahoot, it'll be 10 questions at the end of the lesson. And then the teacher knows, wow, that went really well. That didn't go well. And then they can adjust and they know what needs circled back to the following lesson. So it's made that much easier and much more smooth. There are definitely classes where students don't get their computer out in the class period. And then there are classes where they're doing research or typing a paper or doing something on Schoology where they use them quite a bit. So yeah, that's what I have to share. Sure.
Thank you. So board, I hope that gives you a little snapshot and perhaps goes to answer some questions. I know we've had a lot of discussion over the years about technology. Our discussions took a lot different past year with the need for more technology, with our having gone to a lot of remote learning and online offerings. So be happy to answer any questions at this point, or I know that's a lot of information, but it really was a snapshot. Hopefully it answered questions you have.
Yeah, I would like to make sure that the community realizes that the technology committee, our chairman is Debbie Seibel, and the technology committee, you've heard from some of the teachers here today, but it consists of teachers throughout the different grade levels that we have within our school system. And all of these people are volunteers. They volunteer their time, they volunteer their talents to make it work for the school. So, and I want to also thank Amanda, because Amanda's been joining us here in the last, since she joined the board. And, it's a volunteer organization. These individuals that are part of the committee care so much about the school district that they're willing to, again, take their time and talent and apply it outside of the classroom to make it better for everyone within the community. So thank you.
Great. And we certainly appreciate the board's support over the years in growing our technology program. You have before you an item later on the board where we're recommending to the board to purchase of 400 devices. We can talk a little more there at that point. Any further questions? The second short presentation I've asked for is, you'll see later on the agenda, our recommendation on another topic that we've talked about for about a year at least, relative to the way we schedule and provide math programming at our middle school. And so you're seeing a recommendation for an additional math teacher to be incorporated. So I thought I'd invite Chris to come forward to say a few words about planned use for that additional math teacher and the impact on our program.
Thank you. Dale gave me the reminder by saying short presentation. So I will keep it short. JMS was asked by the board quite some time ago to explore the benefits of having an additional math teacher at the middle school. There have been consistent questions by the board as to, would math achievement be greater if all of our math classes were blocked at the middle school, and would that be advantageous for middle school students? So we've explored that, and now's the time to do it as we're getting ready to go into our master schedule, which we're actually behind on that now. So we need to know one way or another so that we can move into that and what that's going to look like. And if we have an additional math teacher, how is that most beneficial to our students? How would that person be used? So Mr. Rings and I spent a substantial amount of time going through data at different grade levels, looking at what could an additional math teacher, what could that afford our students if we were to be fortunate enough to gain that. So here's some information. I'm going to kind of just throw out some bullet points and some information to you as far as what we're exploring as a building, if that's to be the case. So, and then I'm going to show you just some sample schedules, because I think unless you've done scheduling, it doesn't really make sense. And I'm not sure you'll completely understand it after we look at it in a second, but I want you to get a snapshot of what we have to think about when we think about additional staff. So up until 2019, that administration of the state tests, our middle school students had fared well on those state tests.
traditionally near the top in Licking County. After reviewing iReady diagnostics from not only last year, but this current year, the students have shown good growth in the past and now. When we look at our schedules, all of our ELA classes in grades 6 and 7 are blocked, yet 6th and 7th graders, or 6th graders do not receive blocked math. 8th graders do not receive blocked math or ELA. So, and historically, advanced math students do not receive blocked instruction. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about. Something also to think about when we are looking at schedules is that research shows that students should be properly equipped at an early age as to what their higher grade schedules will look like. So when we look at our students, by the time they're in 8th grade, we're really getting them ready for high school, right? That's the springboard that's going to set them on their way for high school. So if I look at a couple of schedules, what I want you to kind of think about, we would love to have the addition of the math person in our math department. At the same time, we want to protect the electives that you guys have allowed us to provide into our day and offer our students. So if you look at this schedule, this is an 8th grade schedule. An 8th grade takes advanced language arts. So when you look at this, this is today's schedule. So it's not going to show you first semester. This is only 2nd semester classes. The periods are down on the left side. So this student takes advanced language arts, which is not a blocked class. This student takes algebra, which will not be a blocked class. Even with an additional staff person, our proposal would not be to block algebra. They don't block it at the high school or have a double period every day at the high school. So we would want that to look exactly the way it looks at the high school. And then they have their history and science. So those extra periods, that student is a band student and in Jazzy Johnnies. So you can see when you look at this student's schedule, it leaves this student 2 periods a day to choose an elective course. Now, band and Jazzy Johnnies are elective courses. However, you'll see students, if they're a band student, they know they're going to carry that through till high school. They're locked in. That's locked into their schedule. So it provides this student 2 periods. Now, in the course of a school year, those are semesters electives as far as pre-engineering or an office aide or a library aide or computer science. Those are semester courses. So it would give this student actually 4 options for elective classes aside from band and Jazzy Johnnies. So definitely some wiggle room on that schedule. Now, if you look at this schedule, this student has a lot more choices for elective classes. So this is an 8th grader, again, unblocked classes for math and language arts for 8th grade. And because this student does not do choir, Jazzy Johnnies, band, this student's year will have an option for 8 elective courses in the year. So 4, 8 periods a day, 4 of the core courses and the 4 of the elective courses. So this student has far more wiggle room in their schedule than does the student before, the 8th grader before. Something else we have to look at when you look at schedules, this student has a lot more wiggle room. The first schedule I showed you had advanced language arts. That's offered 1 period a day. Okay, it's what we call a singleton, so there's no wiggle room then to adjusting schedules. If we look at a 6th grade schedule, this is a particularly restricted schedule for this student, not all 6th graders, but block math, block language arts, when you get those in there, that's already 4 periods of your 8-period day. So then this student also has science and social studies, and the student is a band student. So that leaves this student 1 period to choose an elective. All right, 2 electives in the course of the year, aside from band, 2 electives in the course of the year because they're semester. This particular student needs academic assist.
So you can see for this particular semester, the student has academic assist. I'm guessing first semester the student had the 6th grade pre-engineering course. So you can see the difference in this schedule that you're looking at now and the 8th grade schedules that I show you. And I only show those to you. We would love to have an additional math person. I only show these schedules to you to let you know the things that we have to work through when we get that person. So it's not always as easy as saying, we have an additional math person. Now everything will be blocked or this will be provided. It's a Rubik's Cube. If you work on scheduling, it is a Rubik's Cube. Debbie Seibel told me years ago, oh, it's fun. It's not always fun. So, her strong suit. So it's not always fun. There's a lot to work around, but certainly there could be big benefits to it. With all of this said, I think the question with the middle school really lies is how far can we take our students? I think that's really the question here, and we need to address that. So while our students are performing fairly well in math overall, could additional instruction time serve to increase achievement? I think we also have to say an additional math teacher could open the doors. We have talked about at the middle school, subject acceleration, right? Which instead of having 7th grade advanced math students, would those students qualify to be in 8th grade math? So you still need the additional staff, but it's a subject acceleration as compared to an advanced placement. Growing our math department could provide the opportunity for additional support with not only struggling students, but advanced students through scheduled tutoring periods throughout the course of the day within their scheduled time. So on a final note, I want you to just keep in mind that a schedule in and of itself is not the most critical component of student success. A well-trained and informed teacher who works collaboratively within their team or department to meet the needs of all learners makes the greatest impact on student achievement, and that would be our goal in hiring this person. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
So a little later in the agenda, we do have a recommendation for the board to consider as to adding a position. If the board should decide to add that position, we will commence with our work, obviously, to further define how this person will be used to help embellish the math programming at our middle school level.
I have a question. Are you enthusiastic about adding a math teacher? Can you see some, just checking, just checking. Okay.
No, thank you.
Next, we've asked Sean Thompson and Carol Dunn to speak briefly on a recommendation we bring before you this evening to allow the creation of a robotics club at our middle school. This is a teacher-generated project that they've came to us requesting, and I felt they'd be better to explain it to you directly this evening. Sean? Thank you.
See if this works. So tonight, we just wanted to present to you an additional opportunity for our students at the middle school for the upcoming school year. So when I presented to the board a couple months ago about our STEM education opportunities at the middle school, I kind of mentioned that a dream of mine would be to bring a robotics club to the middle school. So in talking with Carol Dunn, we would like to propose that to you tonight as an additional opportunity for our students beginning next year. And this club would meet during smart time as well as after school. And again, the primary reason to build on that STEM education piece that we started incorporating in the district. So why Robotics Club? First of all, it builds on our college and career readiness standards, which also lend to some of the programs that are offered at CTEC, robotics being one of those. Also, it builds on some of the necessary skills we kind of expect of our students as they transition to high school, onto college or the workforce. So looking at collaboration, communication, building on their creativity. As you will see in a video here shortly, these students are tasked with building a robot based on certain parameters. So it's up for them to decide, how are they going to achieve the goal? What do they have to do to make that happen? So built on their creative side, they have to problem solve. They have a task at hand. How are you going to make that happen? When it doesn't happen, how can we change our robot so that it accomplishes that goal? And then finally, building on teamwork. So they're not working individually on the robots. They're working as a team of 3 or 4 students to build it based on the annual challenge for the year. So what I wanted to show you guys next is what is involved in a VEX robotics competition. What would the kids be asked to do in that? So I just wanted to play a short video clip for you to give you an idea of what the students would be working on in this club. So seeing what all is involved in that obviously comes at a cost. So I just wanted to talk about, what Ms. Dunn and I are thinking in terms of funding, because we're not coming to you asking for money. So for this, we would need 2 competition robots. Initially, we're looking at starting in a league, which there is no cost associated with being in a league. It's when you enter the actual competition where there are some additional funds. So we're looking at starting on the league side of things, but we want to start with 2 competition robots for our students. And then the potential funding of that would come either through the principal's fund or through private donors. And with that, each competition robot's $1,000 each, so we're looking at $2,000 for the robots themselves. And then the field that you saw in the video, the 12 by 12 field and the perimeter, that stays the same every year. What they do is change the challenge each year. So what you saw there is not going to be the same challenge for this next school year. But with the different pieces of field equipment that we'd be needing, we're looking at funding that through some grants. And I'm happy to report that we've already secured one of those grants, the AEP Teacher Vision Grant for $500. We've already secured that. And then we're applying for the Teacher Gifts Grant, which for that particular grant, we're looking at a maximum of $2,500 to get through that grant. And with the robotics club, a lot of the costs associated is upfront. Once you have the robots in the field, most of the cost associated is, the different challenge for the new year, getting that equipment, and then to enter competitions if that's what we hope to do. So if we go beyond this league, there will be a cost associated with it.
And I might interject at this point. I've been approached numerous times by individuals and companies that have an interest in helping STEM programs. We've kind of held off on applying for those dollars or asking for those dollars because these are the kind of things that they have specifically asked me. Can we help you fund kids going to camps for technology? Can we help you fund equipping clubs like this? So there's several that we haven't tapped yet, but have approached us relative to available funding. So for that up and be willing to work with you, Sean.
Then, so prior to spring break, we surveyed our students to kind of see what level of interest there is in a robotics club. And we had 295 students that submitted, a survey, and that was offered out to the JLA students as well as our in-person ones. So the results of that survey, we had 22 current 6th grade students say yes, they were definitely interested. 18 current 7th graders and 12 current 8th grade students. So when you look at those numbers, you're already looking at about 50 kids that said, yes, we're interested. And the options on the survey were yes, maybe, or no. And you're talking, there were a lot of maybes in there. So these numbers you see are strictly the yeses. And what Ms. Dunn and I intend to do before the school year is over is meet with these students, give them more details. They saw the same video that you saw, as well as there was a description attached to that. So they kind of had a general idea of what would be involved. But we want to meet with those students. Is your yes really a yes? Or are you kind of on the fence now? And to also let their parents know that they express some interest, because obviously there's a commitment level. So we want to see, are the parents in support of their child participating in this as well? But I was extremely encouraged by these numbers, how many students were interested in being part of it. So in terms of, again, we're going to start with league, but in terms of, who has competition teams in the Central Ohio area? Grant Middle School in Marion has a pretty large program. You're probably talking at the middle school level, they typically have about 10 teams in their competition. Highland Middle School in Morrow County. Mount Vernon Middle School. North Union. North Union, I know, has been doing it for 10 years. And quite a premier program. They usually send at least one team to Worlds. So you're talking a cream of the crop team, fairly close here in Central Ohio. And then Zanesville also has a competition team. So my question to you is, in Licking County, how many competition teams do you think there are? Pretty
Good
close.
answer.
I like to be first, so it's okay.
We're close to first,
Oh,
but there is one. Does anyone know what is the
yeah.
I was going to say Licking Valley.
It is Licking Valley. So Licking Valley is the only other school currently that has a VEX VRC competition team. So we would be the second, which again is very exciting. So at this time, I would like to, he couldn't be here tonight, but he did put together a short video, the person that leads at Licking Valley, their robotics program at both middle school and high school level. So Nick is one of them that helped put together a competition this school year. And his particular competition had 60 teams competing. And they held it at CTEC. So again, not necessarily this next school year, but that's definitely something we would like to get involved with. And as he mentioned in the video, you know, with them being close by, that's someone we could scrimmage with, be in a league with, that type of thing, so that our kids could get some experience with this, maybe prior to actually getting involved in a competition.
I was going to add just very quickly. Nick had a baby, that's why he couldn't be here. So he's very excited. I think he chose his child over this meeting. Sorry. But I do want to say one of the gifts of being a CTEC employee with Johnstown, the partnership and everything, Nick and I have gotten very close, and he really, truly is 100% excited about us doing this. And he told us specifically, start slowly, work up, because it's overwhelming. Doing these competitions is huge. So you want to get your kids comfortable with the material. You want to start with the scrimmages that are free. We like free to start. But I will say that those competition robots are expensive, but the beauty is I have robots that we're building in class. So not only is he doing the coding and all the programming on his end,
I'm working on the building in my class. So that along with what we do in SMART and after school, I think is going to definitely, we got this. The kids will be smarter than me by the end of it, but that's okay. So if you support us, we'll do well.
Last thing I would say, I mentioned numbers with the current years. We would like to have them involved next year, even though they're freshmen. It would give the high school a nice, solid group that hopefully someone would agree to be an advisor and run with it at the high school level. And that also offers, opportunities for elementary. So certainly, go down to the elementary school as well, and they could try backside cue competitions and things like that. So definitely could be, something elementary, middle school, and high school.
What's the time commitment for a student if they join your robotics club? Obviously, you said it's in school time as well as external.
And I think we're open to, students can be involved in athletics and do this. Obviously, once we get involved in competition, there has to be a certain level of commitment because their teammates are depending on them. They work as, like a team of four. So you're probably looking at competitions don't typically start until about December. It's more of like a winter sport, I would say. Competitions run from December to about February. State is typically held in April. So you're probably talking a once a week type of commitment for probably an hour or so. But having it available to anyone, whether they're in athletics or not, similar to what we've done with a football player might be in the Big Red Band. So similar idea here. We don't want to exclude anyone, but there would be a certain level of commitment if you wanted to do the competition piece.
How many students do you think you could have in the club? I know you said you had 52. Would you realistically accept all of those? That seems like a large amount. That's why I was asking.
And that's kind of why we want to survey to see, did everyone that responded and say yes, are they really 100% in? And Ms. Dunn and I are talking space-wise, where we're setting that up. We kind of want to use her classroom and then another area right beside that where we could set up the field and leave it set up because that's a time factor if we have to keep tearing it down, putting it back up, plus that's going to wear on the equipment. So 50 is large. So we're kind of waiting to see once we meet with them, send information home to parents, what we're kind of looking at. But 50, yes, does seem like a large number.
And I think with the club too, we don't want to close it to anyone. You know what I'm saying? The club idea. So if kids come during SMART, we may have a population of kids that want to participate in the club, but maybe they don't want to go to that next level. I think there's some room in here to play with, and as he said, based on numbers, we can feel out what kids just want to be exposed to the robots and learn how to, which ones are the ones that really want to get in there and, do the challenges.
That's what I was going to say. So you can be, your concept is you can be in the club, but then you'll have separate yourself to competition level if you want to put action in. So you could be 40 students in a club, but then you maybe have 2 or 3 teams, 8 to 12 students that are really in competition. Okay, I was just trying to wrap my head, and you answered my next question, was the space needed? Wondering how you set that many up. Down all the time. No, I'm excited. It sounds fantastic. I just want to make sure we have set realistic expectations as well. That's all I had.
Thank you, Sean
Thank you
and
very
Carol,
much.
very much for your time. And just a comment that time and time again this year, in the face of a very challenging year educationally, the innovation And the extra time going above and beyond on the part of the staff, stepping up to do extra things is very admirable and very much appreciated. This is just one example of teachers that are having these ideas. They want students to have new and exciting learning opportunities. And so I just want to thank you on behalf of the district.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
No, I know that was fairly lengthy. We probably set a record there, but there's a lot of information that goes behind.
No, I appreciate
these
it. I enjoyed
issues.
this.
We have a lot of issues before us
I
tonight.
enjoyed everything.
And I just think more and more, if we have people that are actually doing this, present, I think it gives you a more direct flavor of what's actually happening. Far better than any one or two of us could come in here and articulate to you adequately. So I do thank everyone's time for doing that.
And I think it's really nice for the community to see the presentations versus us just yes knowing decisions.
There's a lot of exciting things happening, even in the midst of a pandemic at Johnstown schools. And that's exciting. That's exciting.
All right. Kim, on to your treasurer's report.
You should have 2 sets of minutes. You have the March 8th regular session and the April 5th special meeting. You have the March 2021 treasurer's report. We have updated appropriations and estimated resources and 4 donations for you today.
Can I get a motion?
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Discussion? Obviously, we'd like to thank the folks for their donations, continued support for the broadcast studio, and then the donation of the water and snacks. Call the roll.
Mr. Ben?
Yes.
Mrs. Booher? Yes. Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swacker?
Yes, motion carries. Back to you, Mr. Dixon.
Yes, I have a few items this evening. I'll try to be brief since we've had such long presentations already with a few of these items before. Debbie, would you go ahead and get set up for our extended learning presentation, please? In the meantime, while Debbie does that, I want to share with the board today, actually, we received a mailing from Facebook. And I know you're aware of this because I put it in the briefs, but I'm very excited. You know, we talk about this technology this we're implementing in Johnstown. I want to let you know that we received the check today for $65,000 from our grant request with Facebook to support our second-year implementation of engineering and biomedical programs at the high school. This is thrilling because it virtually covers our cost for implementing the second phase of our project, Lead the Way, that everybody's worked so hard to bring about for these children. And I'm just so pleased that Facebook has chosen to be a partner with us yet a second year. So $65,000, we received the check today. They have a little plaque and a certificate here that they sent us. We put the little plaque up in the district office and just look forward to implementing this. The teachers are excited about it. Students are excited about it. We're very pleased with the first year implementation this year and seeing all the students have their hands-on experiences with Mr. Bumbaugh and Mr. Malloy and soon to be Mrs. Thomas and some others. It's just exciting. And so I want to thank you to the board for allowing us to implement what I think is going to be a fine, long-lasting program to the benefit of our students. Secondly, I thought I'd give you just a brief update. If anybody looks at our website, we did really well from the beginning of the school year through about January relative to reporting COVID cases within our district. That was because Licking County Health Department was able to send us data on a weekly basis that we could then convert and break down by grades and report that back out. You will notice on our website that we stopped that in January. It's because once the health department moved into vaccination mode, they just didn't have the personnel to keep up with all the data work. So we don't get that. But I thought perhaps by way of a verbal update for you, just to give you an idea of our year thus far, there's a few more that go back to July cases of positives. However, from the beginning of the year, I've captured each case. We track every single case, as you know. And so far this year, it might help you to know that when we look at total number of students who were COVID positive in our district, these are known COVID positive, whether they were online or in person, that were reported to the health department. And we processed these. We had a total of 62 students. Total of 62 students this year. That breaks down into 37 high school students, 15 middle school students, and 10 elementary students that we have recorded. When we look at staff cases this year, we had a total of 16 staff positive cases, 4 at the high school, 4 at the middle school, and 8 at the elementary school. When I say staff, this includes teachers, administrators, substitute teachers, classified personnel, and coaches. So this is all people total. We had 16 out of over 200 employees. That, while we were not happy to have one of these cases, certainly tells me, in comparison with others that I've been privy to see, when I say others, other areas, we have been very blessed with very few cases. And it just shows me that our parents and our students and our staff have taken seriously the protocols we put in place to help us control the spread. And as we said at the beginning of the year, learning to live with this virus. So I thought I'd just give that to you by way of an update. I'll try to put this in a graph and kind of put an update on our website just to kind of show a total for the year. But if you're wondering why we're not getting those weekly reports posted, I just can't, because I don't have the data that I need from the county to confirm number of cases per 10,000 population that we have in our county. Next, in a very, very short report here, I'd like to ask Derek if you would come forward and just give us a very brief update, please. I want people to understand where we are with respect to graduation and prom, please.
Sure. I will keep this brief and just give you kind of the cliff notes of where we're at. Obviously, this time last year, I did not expect to be preparing COVID-related graduation and prom. I hope that this time next year, I'm not doing the same thing. We'll start with prom. It's first. It happens before graduation. We have secured New Albany Links. We've had prom there before. It's a very nice venue. Probably the most advantageous part of that venue is that the seating for the dinner and the dancing are both outdoors in a tent, so that extra airflow is exactly what the Department of Health is asking us to look for. The Ohio Department of Health, so our prom will be at New Albany Links Saturday 8th from 6:30 to 10. Dinner will be 6:30 to 8, and dancing will be 8 to 10, and I'll get into that a little bit more here in a second. The Ohio Department of Health released prom and post-prom guidance last Wednesday. So we haven't even had it for a week yet, but we did get it, which was helpful. And it kind of confirmed a lot of the things we already had planned. Ms. Merrill's been meeting with the prom committee weekly for the last several weeks. And I would like to say our students have been fantastic all year, but just even fantastic with some of the guidelines that they don't like and they're not excited about. And they missed out, these seniors missed out on prom last year. This is going to be their only prom, but they have been a lot of fun and really taken it in stride, and we appreciate that. Some of the COVID precautions, first of all, we'll follow all the guidelines that are in place from the Department of Health and all their recommendations. Some are must, some are should, can, when possible. Lots of that language throughout the document. Facial coverings will be worn when not actively eating or drinking. Eating and drinking will take place while you're seated. So you can't walk around with a drink throughout the whole venue and say, well, I'm drinking. That sounds bad. Should correct that. Drinking water or 7-Up and Sprite, which is what happens at prom. We'll do temperature scans upon arrival. Hand sanitizer will be available throughout the venue. Eating and dancing will be outdoors under the tent. To allow for social distancing, students, this caught their attention. Students will be assigned to dance times from 8 to 10. So we don't have enough space on our dance floor for all of our students to be there at one time. And quite honestly, they never are there at one time. But if we don't schedule it, that could happen, and we just don't want that to happen. There's not enough space. So they're going to be assigned to tables with numbers, and we're going to have a 20-minute time frame for odd tables and 20-minute time frame for even tables, and then 20 minutes back for odd and even. And to get even a little bit more granular, we will have the dance floor kind of gridded off into squares so that we don't have everyone all in one area. They all tend to kind of gravitate towards the same area. And so what they'll do is we'll have table 1 and 2 in this grid. And so there will be 8 to 10 of them in the box, and that's their area to dance that night. And they'll be with their friends because they select their seats for who they're going to sit with at dinner. And so that's who they will be dancing with. And so if in a week we have a COVID case, they're all going to be close contacts with one another. Because they're eating together unmasked, and they're going to be dancing together masked and as far apart as possible. Students weren't thrilled about that the first time they heard it. I'm thinking it might be a great idea for proms moving forward because to keep them separated, we can really keep an eye on what's going on. That may be one of the things that sticks. We will maintain 6 feet of distance whenever possible. Obviously, when you're sitting down at dinner, you can't do that, but 6 feet between tables. High-touch surfaces are going to be disinfected. These are things we do all day in school, all the time. And one thing you should know, based on survey results, we surveyed all the students who would like to bring someone, a guest, an underclassman, someone from another school. And based on what we've received back, we don't think we're going to have to limit guests. There was some discussion about limiting out of school guests, discussion about limiting freshmen or sophomores. But when you get into it, we really didn't want to do that unless we had to. These seniors missed out on their prom last year. If they have a significant other from somewhere else, we want to try to accommodate them the best we can. And this plan will be shared with the Licking County Health Department for review and feedback. So that is the prom plan. Again, that's May 8th at the New Albany Lakes. Questions about prom?
I've seen footloose.
You know what I'm up against. Yep. It's in many ways, it's a fun night, but it's also just a stress. I'm glad when it's over. Moving on to graduation. Graduation scheduled for Friday, May 28th, 7:30 at Frank Chambers Stadium. The rain date will be Saturday, May 29th at 10 a.m. We are still working with a 25% indoor seating capacity of your fixed indoor seating. So for us, usually the plan would be if we're going to host an outdoor graduation to move it indoors if it's inclement weather. And I think that would result in a really poor graduation experience with the limits we would have to put on attendees. And quite frankly, not quite as safe of an environment either. So we're going to go with that Saturday morning. That doesn't interfere with graduation parties. Most graduation parties are Saturday afternoon or evening. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for good weather like we always do. Again, Health Department released graduation guidance last Wednesday as well. They did prom and graduation. This is going to look very similar to events that we hosted in the fall, like a football game or a soccer game. It's first and foremost, it's outdoors. One of the things that you probably have noticed is we were working on a fixed percentage of fixed seating capacity. We're no longer operating under that for outdoor events. It is simply, can you keep people socially distanced? So groups of people 6 feet apart from other groups and groups of no more than 10. So you could have 5 people and then 6 feet apart, 5 people and 6 feet apart, 5 people. And that's how we'll set it up. The guidance is students and staff at least 3 feet apart, which is the same thing we have in classrooms right now. So it's essentially, we would be going outside for class for this graduation ceremony. So you might see graduates and teachers a little bit closer and groups of guests 6 feet apart. Still working on final number of guests per student. We're trying to make that as much as possible. Hand sanitizer throughout the facility. Guests and staff do have to wear facial coverings in compliance with the health orders that do allow for limited exceptions, but that's the expectation that they've released for prom, or for graduation. So we'll do our best to enforce that. The orientation this year for an outdoor ceremony is going to look a little different. So you're used to seeing the graduates facing the home section. And we're going to do it a little differently this year, where the graduates will actually be seated on the field facing the scoreboard, and the stage will be on the field facing the school. so that we can utilize the bleachers on home and away. Again, to increase the number of the social distancing and the number of people who can attend. And this is in line with what a lot of schools do as far as orientation of their students at graduation. The other reason is we'd really like to incorporate the scoreboard as part of the ceremony. And if you're sitting in the home bleachers and your student is graduating right here, but their picture's up on the scoreboard over here, you're kind of toggling between both. And we think that if you're looking this way, what we hope to have is if you were at the varsity show, you maybe saw their senior picture and their name up there as they're getting their diploma. We think that'll be kind of neat. So we're trying to work that out. We will have storied rivals here. They did our graduation last year. They did a really nice job. Did all of our live streaming. They're going to do a 2-camera setup for us, and they will live stream graduation. It should look very professional, cutting between angles, featuring the speakers. And then they're going to make that available for several weeks for a free digital download for anyone who wants one. So grandparents, parents, students, they'll be able to download a digital copy of that. One of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about is the gatherings after the ceremony. We will make announcements, please don't congregate, but it's such an emotional event and they're kind of done at that point. And it's so customary to hugs and kisses and pictures and all that stuff. So we will do our best to discourage it, but just prepping you're going to see pictures after graduation. And, if they don't do it here, they're going to do it at home. And so we'll encourage people to do the best they can. Other than those changes, you should see a very typical graduation ceremony. We will keep the same schedule, the same kind of procedures. The pomp and circumstance will look very similar. It'll just be set up a little differently and with COVID guidelines. Final thing I will tell you is one thing that will be interesting or different this year is our projected, and I say projected because these things can change at the last minute. People leapfrog. Projected valedictorian, he will not be able to attend graduation. And so our salutatorian will give a speech, but then we're going to try something that other schools already do. Many schools do this for their graduation speeches in general, is open it up to the senior class and allow students to present a speech that they would like to give at graduation that will be viewed by a committee or review committee, and we will select the one that we think is the best and most fitting. So they will prepare their speech, they will deliver it to us, and we'll have a feel for that. I know Granville, that's how they do theirs. You're familiar with that? Yeah, where any student is eligible to submit one. If that goes well and that is something that we want to consider, we could do that. My recommendation is we wouldn't do it until we would announce it to incoming freshman class, so that the kids who are valedictorians who are expecting to deliver a speech who are currently enrolled in high school would have that privilege. But we'll see how that works. So questions about graduation? Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Final topic, certainly not least, that we'd like to address with the board this evening. I know you've had a lot of questions and regarding the need for extended within our school district. Take you back a little bit. We all have been very concerned throughout the year with what kind of loss of learning might be taking place during the course of the year, both looking at our JLA students as well as our in-person students with the various interruptions, quarantines, etc. that's occurred throughout the year. And so we came back for the second semester and began to have conversations relative to what help might look like for any students that we might find as we get toward the end of the year who may need that extra little boost to help them, particularly if they were impacted by the COVID negatively with regard to their learning losses. And so the administrative team talked, we came up with criteria, how to identify students, etc. Well, in the midst of those conversations, the governor came out and said, We'd like to see extended learning plans, and we'd like them up on a website, on your website by April 1st. That came out, I believe, 2/3 of the way through February. And so that kind of ramped up our thinking and, well, okay, we've got to meet this requirement now. So we developed an extended learning plan, and it's posted on our website. But you'll see when you go to that website that there's a lot of we will consider, we will look into, we will analyze. We have our criteria down for the different potential extended learning experiences that were under consideration. So tonight, I and Debbie would like to provide you with a snapshot, if you will, of our current point in time and where we are with regard to this. COVID-19 pandemic has caused interruptions to our usual and customary ways of providing instruction. We've been very fortunate in this district to have staff, parents, and community who have stepped up to provide a good quality, good continuity of learning opportunities for our students while learning to live with the virus this year. Because of this can-do spirit, our students have not experienced the level of unfinished learning that districts throughout the state and nation, those who have utilized other instructional delivery models, such as hybrid or fully remote, have experienced. We utilize the terms of unfinished learning and unfinished teaching when analyzing any need for extended learning for students of our school district. And I want to say again, I've alluded to it a couple of times during this meeting already. I can't thank our staff and our students and our parents and this board and the administrative team and all the classified individuals who really came together. And board members were in meetings at the beginning of the year. We didn't know what we didn't know. And to come together and pull off what this district has pulled off this year is nothing short of amazing. And it's because of that can-do spirit that I wrote in there. It's incredible. And because of that, we're finding ourselves in a much better position relative to student learning losses. And so we began to ask ourselves questions, and Debbie and I narrowed this down to 5 questions. How does unfinished learning during winter of 2020-21 compare to what we have seen historically in the areas of math and reading? Why math and reading? We do the most diagnostic testing on that 3 times a year, K through 8, and it gives us some tremendous data that we can look at to measure any loss of learning and determine loss of learning that is or is not due to COVID. How does unfinished learning vary by subject and grade level? How does unfinished learning impact course failures at the middle and high school levels? What growth in learning have students experienced throughout the course of the school year compared to historical growth? And what extended learning is reasonable and practical for our district to consider? These are questions we sought to answer. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Debbie, who will review some of the data that we've been reviewing and some snapshots so you get a sense of just how much loss of learning may or may not occur.
As we take a look at the data that we have prepared tonight, I just want to make one point that while we think our iReady data is certainly valuable and reliable data, as well as you're going to see some comparisons to course failures in secondary, that's not the only data that we base decisions on. We have other data as well, but we have, I think, some exciting news to share this evening. The first slide is taking a look at the results of the winter reading diagnostic. And that was administered in January. And I've put 2 triangles up here. The one on the left is from 2019-20, pre-closure, pre-COVID. And the one on the right is from our 2021 iReady winter data. This is for all grades K through 8 reading. When you look at this, first of all, you need to understand that there's a very strong correlation between iReady winter diagnostic data in the student's success on the spring end of course exam, well, actually OST, Ohio State test in reading and math. And looking at this triangle right here, you can see that at risk for tier 3, very, very slight increase of 1 percentage point. You see the yellow triangle, tier 2, has gone up a little bit. We were at a 23% in that of students that placed in that tier, and this year it was 27. Tier 1 was 66 in previous year and 62 this year. What's I think really important to understand that with that correlation to the Ohio State test, if a student scores in tier 1 on the reading winter diagnostic, they are highly likely to score proficient or higher on that spring test. In tier 2, the students in tier 2, they are 85% likely to be successful on that spring OST. And in tier 3, they're 30 to 40% likely. So we like the fact that there is correlation to the end of the course exam. We like the fact that we've got historical data to compare to. I just compared the last 2 years, but we've also looked back 3 years and 4 years where we have the data. So from the overall percentages, there's not a lot of change between what we saw last winter and what we saw this one. When you dig deeper, and our principals and our teachers, they dig much, much deeper into the data. They go to not only to the grade level, but then they go to the individual class level and then into the individual student level, and they can actually break all this data out by domain within a subject to really get a good idea of what's going on with a student or a class's learning. So when we go a little deeper, we took a look at, well, that's look by grade level. What does our data look like? And we did a 3-year comparison here for the years we had 3 years worth of data, which you would see as kindergarten, first, second, and third. And you'll notice very straight line in kindergarten. Well, they really were not impacted last year by the school closure because they were not in school. If we look at first and second grade, that's where if we have any change, it's been the most noticeable, and I think it's what we would have anticipated and expected. Because if you think about the type of skills kindergartners and first graders and even second graders are working on and the growth that they make, we're not surprised that there may be a little more difference here than, say, you look at grades 7 and 8, and you can see actually our percentages went up in those grades this year. So I don't think it's a reflection of any of the instruction or anything. I think it has a lot to do with where those students are in their learning. And Marcy, you can add anything to that. I know we've had a lot of conversations about that. But basically, we looked at our reading data and we compared it to 3 years' worth by grade level. Then we also looked at the class of, so that we're comparing the same students to the same students. And again, first and second grade would be those areas that we would think could be impacted most by last spring. However, when you go on out, you see very little change in our data overall. This is identical to that first slide we talked about, except this is based on the math diagnostic. And you can see, again, very little change in the red part of the triangle, which are our students at risk for tier 3. Again, a little bigger yellow group, and a little smaller green group. Now remember too, this is the winter diagnostics. So this is January, so that wouldn't necessarily be our current situation. And we'll have great data in the spring from another iReady diagnostic and grade levels that have the state test also. We'll also take a look at that data too. Again, this is a breakdown by grade level of the math diagnostic. And you can see Seuss here also some of the same trends continuing. This is a breakdown by class. So the class of 2032 would be this year's first grader. You see their kindergarten data and their first grade data. And we follow that all the way up to our eighth graders, class of 2025, and differences in that data. Not only did we look at where students placed overall, we also wanted to take a look at how are our students growing this year? Are they making up anything that might have been learning that they may have lost last year? And what's important to understand about this slide is iReady sets a growth target for every single student based on that, where that student is. You, for example, in third grade, if you're a student below grade level, your target on a scale score, your growth will probably be higher than a student at or above grade level because they are working to close that gap for those students. So at winter, the first, the top chart there is our reading growth. At winter, our goal would be for that progress to be at 50%, and that's a median of all scores. And what is a really, really good number to hit in winter is 50%. And you can see in reading it with elementary, you're at 69%, at the height in middle school, 100%. Then you look at the percent met, and that percent met means that by winter, 34% of all elementary school students had already met their individual growth target. So they've got 5 more months of instruction. So that's a tremendous number, as well as the 52% that have met that at the middle school. And then the same thing with the math growth targets. The elementary is right where they need to be with growth, and that 50%, 18% of those students have met that growth already. And at the middle school, you can see 73% is where the progress median is, and 40% of those students have already met their 1 year's growth at the winter diagnostic. We think that this will, I think we'll even see, well, I know we will see continued growth and a much different look in the spring. We also consulted with Morgan Bennett King and Pauline Bennett from iReady. They're our consultants, and we asked them to take a look at our data with us. So we had a Zoom call with them. Chris and Jeff and I were on that call, and right off the bat, I said, hey, could you take a look at our data and draw some conclusions? I want to make sure what I'm seeing is, you see data across the state, across the country. I want to make sure what I'm seeing, I'm interpreting correctly. And right off the bat, they very enthusiastically said, you have some of the best data that we've seen in the state. They work with over 180 schools in the state, and they also compared it to national averages across the nation. And they could not have been more excited about our data. Their comments were based on the winter diagnostic of historical schools. We do not see impact from COVID closure. Now, they're looking, again, we're looking at one diagnostic, one piece of data, but from their perspective, and they're working with schools all over the place, again, they were enthusiastically celebrating about our data. They also made the point that this is not what they're seeing at the state or national level, and they're seeing some negative impact statewide, nationally, particularly in math, and we would not draw those conclusions from our data. They also said your scores have remained fairly consistent when we went back even further than I showed here. So we thought that was pretty good, and kind of what we were looking at too. Again, another piece of data that we track every year, we looked at this year, were course failures. So we took a look at middle school first semester. And again, we based this on first semester because we had that data already for this year, and it was pre-COVID last year. So we carried that data 3 years back just to say, hey, how is it historically? And you'll see as we go through these happen to be math scores. Blue is 2 years ago, orange is last year, gray is this year. You'll see that, yeah, in sixth grade, the failures are up slightly. And you also have to remember, this is based on either 130 to 140 students in those courses. But then you'll also notice in 7th and 8th grade math, failures are down. ELA failures, they've been pretty well. 2 years ago, they were non-existent. They were 0. Last year, there was a handful in 8th grade. This year, that increased slightly. But again, that increase is pretty slight. Yeah, the one thing I hate about graphs sometimes, because they're such low numbers, the bars make it look like a high spike, and not necessarily. That could be an increase of 5 students. When you look at high school first semester failures in algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, you see those graphs too. Slightly higher in algebra 1, but less in geometry and algebra 2. And first semester ELA course failures at the high school. Same thing. Most of them are fewer failures, other than ELA 11, which is up very, very slightly. So we looked at course failures as a second data point. Questions before we get to conclusions? Questions about any of the data?
Obviously, we're concerned in a normal year about any student not working up to grade level, not working to capacity, and it's a constant struggle to reach some of these students with help. Teachers do a wonderful job of reaching out to these students. So in a normal year, we continue to be concerned about students who may not be producing a level of student achievement we think they're capable. But after reviewing this data, we've come to the following conclusions relative to extended learning. Since we have provided in-person instruction and live teacher-student interactive learning for online students, the need for extensive extended learning is very minimal for our district. Secondly, we expect the minimal loss of learning indicated in some grade levels as of the January diagnostic to improve by the time of the spring diagnostic is administered in May. We'll have a lot more data at the end of this year to know concretely who are our identified students in need of help, and if any were directly related by COVID that need service. Thirdly, students who were at or above grade level prior to the pandemic remain at or above grade level, indicated little impact on loss of learning from the pandemic. In fact, we are seeing increases in growth for students in most areas of math and reading. There is not a significant change in the number of course failures in grades 6 through 12 compared to previous years. We have determined that a summer extended learning school is not recommended or practical except for necessary credit recovery in grades 6 through 12, utilizing our PEAK program, which you formerly knew as JOLT, along with an in-person 3-week option for grades 9 through 12. At our high school, we will more than likely be coming to you at the May meeting asking for approval of some stipends to be paid for some teachers to take on some in-person work for students to choose versus the online work in helping them with their credit recovery. We're still developing that, but I would expect that by the May board meeting. But as far as our original conversations regarding a 3-week program for other grade levels, we just don't think that would be prudent or necessary at this time. And finally, we anticipate that we will utilize the ESSER dollars. This is the COVID relief funding during the 2021-22 school year to provide any necessary extended learning for students identified with having any significant loss of learning due to the pandemic. We believe limited extended day interventions, 2 or 3 days per week, right after school, might be a possibility, and we'll know more following the fall iReady diagnostic administration. We think that would be the optimal way to address any remaining student loss of learning at that time. And quite frankly, my friends, students, parents, educators, they're wore out from the year. And we question how much participation we would actually have this summer. We're hearing from a lot of parents and students, hey, we're ready for a break. We've worked hard this year. Our data is showing that everybody's worked hard, that continuum of educational learning, or continuum of instruction is paying off. And again, as I started out, I can't thank the staff enough because we're seeing the fruits of all that effort throughout the year. Be happy to answer any questions the board might have as we continue our understanding of what this extended learning is for our district. And by the way, the plan that is on our website will continue to change as we need to. It's a fluid document. So we will reflect some of these conclusions in that plan going forward. Questions, comments, suggestions for improvement? We're open to any.
I appreciate all the gathering of the data. I'm really nerdy and super into that kind of stuff, so that was very fascinating for me. No, I think that's all the previous conversations we had, and then seeing the numbers, I think it makes a lot more sense with what you're recommending now.
Any comments from principals having heard this, things that we might have missed that need to be shared?
I would just say I think I speak for all the principals.
Thank you, Derek. One more piece of information I will share with you to consider, and it might yield benefits to all of our students in my district. Experiencing a struggle with the class or two or even some standard. As we go in and look for programming for next year where we might help our student body, we must keep in mind that of the ESSER dollars that we're expecting to get from the federal government, we are under a direct mandate to spend 20% of those funds on what they call closing the gap. We are fortunate in this district to not have much of a gap for what we call loss of learning. That may help us embellish opportunities to help our at-risk children. So we want to use those dollars nicely. There's something to put back of our heads as we consider programming. Thank you.
I have a question. Are you looking at any of the main courses that they need in order to get into college that if they scored a D, it's unacceptable? We won't be able to use that coursework. So are we looking at that at the high school level at all?
I can't say at the district level we have gone that far, and
I know we were looking at failure, so I don't want to.
right, we do look at failures because they need the credit. They need the credit.
Absolutely.
But on an ongoing basis, I think I would rely on my high school.
Absolutely. Thank you. Or for whatever they missed to go on to the next, I don't know, what's next, geometry or algebra 2? I don't know. Yeah.
So the answer would be that would be available should they choose to get into that peak program.
Any other questions?
I want to thank the board
Thanks.
for enduring a lot of information tonight. I hope it's helpful and I hope it lays a foundation for us moving forward to resolve some of the issues that lie before us. So with that, Mr. President, I can move on to superintendent recommendations for action this
Yeah,
evening.
I'd like to just comment. I think I really have enjoyed the extended learning flexibility. I think we're moving in the right direction. And initially, it seemed like maybe we had a lot of obligations from the state that maybe we're going to put us in a little bit of a box. And I really appreciate the data that has been produced and the administrators that have really identified what we need to do. It does give us an opportunity to spring forward with the ESSA dollars that we can use now that we don't have to play catch up. We can use it to spring forward. So thanks so much.
Thank you. My recommendations to you this evening are, first of all, on the consent agenda, items A through G. I'll briefly describe each for you. We're asking you to approve a one-year contract with Harvard for contracted custodial services for the district for fiscal year 2022. And I want to thank the many hours that the Buildings and Grounds Committee met and helped giving input with regard to such contract. I will tell you on this and the next item, the contracts themselves have been from the company to the attorneys and back and forth. They've been vetted out by our board's attorneys. We feel confident in the contracts, even though I think you received a printed copy of the community bus service contract, which is the next item before you tonight. We are still awaiting the Harvard contract. Is that correct, Ms. Pulley? Thank you. So we're asking for approval of a one-year contract for Harvard. Under item B, we're asking to approve a renewal of a 5-year contract with community bus service to provide transportation services effective July 1st of this year through June 30th of 2026. Under item C, asking the board to approve one-year agreements with Licking County ESC. There are 3 types of contracts. One's general services contract. The other is early education services contract for children with disabilities. The other is the amendment to that contract, which takes care of a state change in state law with regard to how they are funded. And I will tell you briefly with regard to the ESC contracts, they have stayed fairly level. The projection for next year is $614,000. We currently, on the current year, are at a $660,000 pace. A year ago, we had a dip in the total paid out. It was only $430,000. But the year before, we paid $741,000, and we had a refund from fiscal year 20 original to the end of fiscal year 19 in the amount of $841,000. So this amount fluctuates every year when we renew with ESC, because a lot of it's based on the number of students being served in our various MD units, being served in our SED units, which is behavior related units, those numbers at preschool. So someday preschool really drives this a lot. So if we have low numbers in preschool one year, we may project current numbers, but the following year they don't come through and don't go, so the numbers come down. So that's why the variation in these numbers. I know you ask about that every year. I just thought I'd get ahead of it and share that with you now in my report. So I'm asking for approval of our contracts then with ESC. Under item D, I'm asking the board to please approve a 2-year contract renewal with Rehab Associates. This is the group that provides our occupational therapy and our physical therapy on an as-needed basis. Under item E, I'm asking the board to approve 1-year contract with Licking Memorial Hospital to provide 2 RN nurses to serve our district for fiscal year 2022 at a cost of $90,000. This would elevate our current nurse, Annie Britton, to RN status with Licking Memorial, which we considered going into this year, but as a pandemic year and needing the extra nursing services, decided to put it off for this particular year until we saw how we came through that. So we're very, very pleased to make that recommendation. Annie does a wonderful job. Don does a wonderful job. And while I'm on that, I'll just say Sarah Atkins has really stepped up and been a gem and helped us tremendously through this pandemic year and continues to do so. So we appreciate her service, albeit temporary. Under item F, recommending a 5-year internet service agreement with Northern Buckeye Educational Council, Northwest Ohio Computer Association, starting July 1st. The cost of this service is $34,638.93. That provides a 1 gig service to our district. However, it is subject to a 60% reduction because this was bid out through our E-Road rate program. So we will actually only pay 40% of that. Correct, Ms. Fuller? Thank you. And under item G on the consent agenda is my recommendation for you to approve the robotics club as proposed by teachers Sean Thompson and Carol Dunn.
I only need C pulled out.
C.
Vote on that.
Yep. Can I get a motion for A, B, D, E, F, and G, pulling out C separately?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please, or any discussion? Okay. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swanger?
Yes. Can I get a motion on item C?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yes, I'd like to point out, I'm not opposed to a contract with ESC, of course I'm not. But as I looked at the contract, item 3 on their contract and item 4 talk about the 1 year, let's see, it talks about, and thereafter it shall be renewed for successive terms, each of 1 year until this contract is terminated, as provided in paragraph 4. This, to me, is a type of contract that we had with Coke and Pepsi and we've had with other companies similarly, not exactly. But I am never interested in a succession contract that has a specific termination date, but it also self-renews without bringing it to the board. This board understands it. Right now, we're talking about it. But a new board may well, A, miss that termination date. If you remember Trucca and LACA, we were 3 years getting out of Trucca. So I would like to see, I'd like to refer, for my person, I'd like to have that go back to ESC, see if we could talk about the language on the terms of the contract and the contractual termination. If those 2 items could be reworked verbally, I don't have a problem with it. If they can't be, I would be not interested in passing on an inheritance to the next board. I don't approve of the language.
Actually, I had a question on that myself, because can you as a board allocate monies before, what if we don't have the money? You know what I mean? For contracts
Yes.
in perpetuity renewing, but we've not really allocated those monies. So we shouldn't be able to legally do that. So that was my concern with that.
We can certainly check on that language for some changing, as has been the practice each year. However, we bring this to you in April. That's not to say somebody couldn't make a
And that's
mistake
fine
or
if we-
something like that, but we bring it back for approval every year, and it is understood, and we have the right to get out so long as we, take and give the notice as per item 4. I can go back and certainly research that with our attorney and the ESC itself. I know this is the standard agreement that's used by all the districts in Licking
I'm
County.
sure it is.
So I can do that. Would the board like to approve this pending resolution of that language to allow for annual renewal by the board to get that out? That way we can act and move forward on it with
Yeah.
that change.
I'll either abstain or vote no. I think we need to see language change for me, because it does have a specific date by which you have to do certain things. I've seen the board miss that over the years, and
Right.
then you're into legal issues. So
So
my history tells me that's not a positive thing unless you can review the language. And you graciously said we could do that. So I just think
we can
that's
ask.
an opinion
Yeah,
for them.
we can ask, and I can certainly work on that change. My question is, do you require it to come back before the board? If I change that language prior to May and get this accomplished, can we move forward with the signed contract
What
in
would you,
consultation with the board president who has to sign.
what would you propose that language to be? Could we have a little bit of a discussion on how you would see proposing to them that we could change?
Yes, I'm
item
hearing the
3 and
request to
4?
be that you don't want to have the language shall be renewed for successive year terms included in item 3.
I just take out after, on item 3, take out after July 1, 2021, and then the rest of that language is extraneous. Because we wouldn't be referring to paragraph 4. And on paragraph 4, we really don't need that at all. Other than we should, I do believe that the ESC should have written notice, and you can make it 30 days or 10 days or whatever, an appropriate. I do believe that's the right way to do it. So I don't have a suggestion for the language on 4.
My guess is on 4, they're referring to Ohio Revised Code dates on which the action must be taken on ESC contracts. That's what I need to research. But I'm guessing
Okay.
that there's going to have a date where we must take action to
Yes,
renew
I
for
agree.
them to do their work.
Mhm.
So if you'll trust that I will work with the attorney, and I'll get you a copy of whatever adjustments
That's
are out.
fine. Just if we can
I'm
change
just,
that.
I'd rather move forward and execute the contract with that change rather than come back in May and we're after the designated time and we might get into legal problems there. That's all I'm
Okay,
asking.
so
What
we're,
happens if you can't change the language?
Then he has to bring it back.
He still has to bring
I'll
it
be in
back.
consultation with the
I don't
board
know.
president.
I'm just
letting them
asking
know.
fair
what
enough.
happens.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Mhm.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
We'll,
that's fine.
we'll look at that, but if then the motion to approve this would be motion to approve pending changes, appropriate changes to item 3 and 4,
Correct.
Perfect,
then
perfect.
Treasurer can make a note of that and we'll go to work on that in the morning.
Yeah, Ms.
Okay.
Pulley, did you capture that? If I can get a motion for that,
I'll amend the motion, the previous motion.
okay,
I second.
thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
And Annie, thank you for standing for our lengthy meeting. I know that you are well-loved and valued in our school, and you probably take care of every single one of my kids on a weekly basis, so I appreciate you very, very much.
Yep,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Under item H, I'm asking the board to authorize the purchase of 400 computers and license at a total cost not to exceed $110,000. Remind the board that we plan on using ESSER dollars to make this purchase. With all our changes in technology being brought about due to the COVID virus, this is a justified, Kim assures me it's justified expenditure, and we think it's a wise use to do this purchase at this time with those dollars. There was a question that came to me in advance of the meeting, whether because it's federal dollars, we can, well, that goes with fees, excuse me. But we can use these dollars to make this purchase. And
Does this count toward the 20% gap since
Not
we're
necessarily,
utilizing it or
no.
not?
no, I think it has to be a hard case to make.
I like to skate on the outside of the pond.
I know you do.
I'm
But
with
the
you,
ice is a
Tim.
little
We
thin
almost
right
had
now.
it.
Ice is a little thin in that
All right.
section of the pond, Tim.
All right.
So I recommend that too.
If I can get a motion,
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second.
discussion?
Yes, I have just a bit of a conflicted heart. I have no problem with the money to expend the money for Chromebooks. I would like to have had a little more discussion with our very able teachers to tell me how in the world we can keep that personal touch that we've all enjoyed with our kids, the tactile learning and the writing exercises and so forth. I have not seen any kind of a proposed schedule that would say, we're going to buy these Chromebooks, but we're going to limit it in the schedule in this manner. So I don't know that answer. So it just troubles me because I've really appreciated how we've presented learning, that we have that hands-on paper, pencil interaction with our kids. That's where I am. I'm sorry, Kim. Sure, can
Could
you
you step
speak
to the
louder
podium,
though?
Chris, please?
Unless you're going to shout back there, take a microphone. And I'm not speaking, wait, be Chris, before you answer that, I'm not even the least bit concerned about anything past third grade. It's that lower elementary where
Well,
they,
and they can certainly, I'm guessing
I know
I'm
what you
speaking for
have.
everyone, but from what we see, from what I see when I'm in classrooms every day, there is a wonderful mix of everything. So they're still writing, they're still doing hands-on. I mean, look at what we brought into the district Project Lead the Way on and getting kids to work on projects like that. It's very typical for me to go into a classroom now and see, when I was in Mrs. Fleming's room the other day, she started with guided notes. They went into the lab about water displacement, and then their follow-up and their review was on their Chromebook. So with the writing piece, I was in a 6th grade language arts class last week, the end of last week. They were doing all of their pre-writing on paper.
I'm sorry, did you say 5th grade?
6th grade. All of their pre-writing was
and
on
I'm
paper.
comfortable with,
Yeah, I just think from our viewpoint, we see those pieces all the time. I'm like you in this sense where I think about when I'm writing, I want paper and pencil. But I do think when it comes to writing, we have to remember, I think there's still a lot of pre-writing happening on paper, a lot of graphic organizers, the kids used to do that. But I think we're also raising a generation of kids who are learning to compose on the computer. We didn't learn that way. So I think our kids, this generation is getting the benefits of both, of being able to do those things, both electronically and on paper. So I know that was a big concern for you guys early on as far as, well, how much screen time, or are they still doing all those traditional pieces? And at least at the middle school, I see a wonderful mix of all of those
I see so much screen time actually among families. If you go out to eat, you see people, a family sitting there, but everybody's on a device.
Sure.
I just think to introduce it at K3 in school is that overload? Are we being responsible? I don't know.
Well,
Can
and
I see
Roseanne,
the
you
benefits?
were on
Of course.
some of the discussions that Alan and I were a part of. My understanding for K3, because I have 2 kids, K3, is that it's not that they're planning to use it more than they are. They're not planning to put them in front of a screen next year any more than they're already in front of a screen this year. It's that instead of a kid having, them having 5 stations because there's 5 computers and they have to, move everything around. It's just that everyone would be on the computer at one time versus sort of having stations. So you're not using it more. They're just all sort of maybe using it at the same time for the same things. And I also know, again, I'm sure Jana will cover it, but there's still, I as a parent, I see on their, report card about handwriting and standards for that, and whether it's, so I don't think, and I think from a parent's perspective, I really don't have a concern, and I limit screens quite a bit at my house. I don't have a concern because they really have conveyed, it's not about using it more, it's just maximizing, not having to shuffle things, but, things like handwriting would never go away. And I think you guys are at a disadvantage because you aren't in the classrooms every day, so you don't get to see it. But these teachers are amazingly creative, and I think a piece of it is trusting them to know how to use the devices and to do the right things with them. So I think that's a piece of it.
And one of the things I wanted to just follow up with what Mrs. Allmendinger said was how the writing for students that struggle to write just pencil and paper, they can take a screen and they can type in ideas or sentences. And then I've seen the intervention specialist help them organize that into a paper, whereas that student wouldn't be able to do that previously. You may be able to explain that better.
Well, and I think it goes back to Ruthie, what you said about differentiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
For some students, it works best,
Yes.
paper pencil, and for others not. So to have those options, I think is wonderful.
Well, and we're also a victim, I call us a victim in a sense, in testing things. Because if we have to be ready by 3rd grade, and we have to do keyboarding by 3rd grade, I think I'm right, then obviously we have to be more adept sooner than we have been in the past. So I'm just thinking of the little ones and saying, gee, I hope there's still finger painting and writing with pencil and paper.
Yeah,
One plausible point, if I could share, when we were in these discussions internally, folks shared with me the fact that when we're debating this very issue, that because we have, say, 7 computers per class, and they have to rotate section, you were alluding to this a little bit, section around, they're working over here tactily with other students while these are on the computer. By the time they ship them through, had they had everyone with a computer doing that activity on the computer, then they're off of that and they're all back into tactile types of instruction together. That's the efficiency I think they were looking for.
My thought is I actually see how going one-to-one at the elementary can actually help them be on screens less. I know it seems strange, but because
They came across that way in our discussion.
because
Yeah.
you know you're spending 10 minutes with these kids doing it, and you're shuffling around, say, and then you have to come over and help them and give them the instructions, and then they're switching. And you have to come over and give them the instructions, and they're switching. Versus all of the students being on there at the same time, you give that set of instructions one time, maybe you have to help 1 or 2 kids. You can actually get through that iReady lesson much faster and move on to other things that aren't on the screen.
Well, and just 2
Janet,
points
go
that
ahead.
go along with that. I'll speak specifically to
No,
third
that's
grade.
okay. I just am trying to talk about what I hear from parents. And I'm
appreciate
trying
it.
to
I mean,
represent
no,
the fact they don't
appreciate
want
it.
so much technology
Well,
at such an early age.
Right.
But do they want it? Of course they do. We all
Well,
do.
let me, and so I want to speak to third
Sure.
grade because I can. One of the things that one of the third grade teachers said to me when we had our team meetings and we were talking about this was, let's say I'm doing research. So this is a typical year, not this year where we can't do small groups and do centers. Let's say it's a typical year. And I am teaching my students to go to, and one of the websites was Facts for Me, because when you are in your center, you're going to be doing research. I'm going to have a group back at the table, and I'm going to be working hands-on with them. Another group is going to be working on flashcards as a group practicing something. So my model hasn't changed in that maybe only 7 students are on a computer during center time. What changes is as a teacher, I can get all of those computers out. I can have everybody at the same time practice getting to that website. I can help them make sure everybody knows it, put them away, and then 7 of them work on it. But it's not, I teach that skill, 7 kids get to practice it that day, and then the next day, 7 children are 24 hours removed from me telling them how to do that, and the next center of children are 48 hours removed. So nothing's going to change about the centers and the teachers sitting back with their table and working with those students. It's just the efficiency with which we can get students to do something. So the other thing I wanted to point out is I point blank asked the teachers. I said, what am I going to see go away if there are one-to-ones? And the answer was nothing. So, and I know this was up there, but I want to take a moment to point them out. In third grade, they do interactive notebooks, and they do them for math, for reading, and for writing. And those will always, always continue to happen. There will be interactive notebooks for those 3 subjects, whether we have 11 computers in our room or we have 22 computers in our room. And those are vital tools that they use. And the reason that we use them is because we put in graphic organizers. We do Venn diagrams where the students compare and contrast. Right now, we're talking about how to write a multi-paragraph essay because that is a requirement for third grade. And they are actually using a blank or a lined piece of paper, learning how to fold it so that the topic sentence goes here. My hook goes here. This is my first paragraph. This is my second paragraph. That will never go away because developmentally, that's where students are. They can't do that any other way and learn it other than writing it. I just watched that in a 4th grade lesson the other day. So that will never go away. Math computations, they were very quick to say, that will never be anything but paper, pencil. You cannot teach children math computation without writing. We use graph paper at times for students to help them learn how to line place value. We're teaching place value in 5th grade to 3 places, to the right of the decimal. So students, it's really important, to, especially in 3rd grade, in that formative, when they're learning to do multiplication and multi-digit multiplication, They have got to understand how to line up their numbers and keep their place value. There's no other way to do that except writing it on a whiteboard, writing it on paper, and that will never go away. The other thing is math graphing. We do all kinds of graphing activities when students learn how to make line graphs and how to make bar graphs. In fact, if you were able to walk down the hallway, you would see fourth grade right now, but they all do this. They were doing an exercise with graphing, with interviewing students about what are your favorite pets, and then they graphed them. Learning what a pictograph is. They make all of those. That all goes into their interactive notebook, which becomes a resource for them through the entire school year. And then our third grade, all grades, but our third grade uses a very specific graphic organizer each week when they teach vocabulary. And for each word, it's in the center. There is a synonym, there's an antonym, there's definitions. Use it in a sentence. That is put into their writing graphic or their writing interactive notebook. And they specifically referenced every one of those and said, none of that will go away, because they understand. I know I process by writing. I can't process unless I'm writing something. I can't learn. It's very difficult for me to learn from a screen, so I'm very sensitive to that. But when asked and when I really put it to them, they said that none of those things, nothing will change, except they believe they will become much more efficient with their use of time for their students. Thanks, So, Janet. I appreciate the discussion. I really do. Thank you.
And I know Jerry and Autumn hung around a long time tonight, because they were the most impacted, because they're the youngest grades. And when I talk to them, and when they talk to Amanda and I, it really goes back to, you have a finite resource, which is called teacher's time, right? So what do the computers do? They actually leverage that resource, because that resource is having to do the same thing repeatedly over and over and over just to get a task completed. And what the devices are going to do is it's going to eliminate the need for the teacher to give the same instructions over and over and over and over again. So if we eliminate that time, then that teacher then has that time to spend on advancing the education of that student, instead of just spending that time repeating those instructions over and over and over again. So that was the main focus, I believe, of what they were saying, is that it's not going to change what they do, it's just going to allow them to do more.
I got that, Alan.
Okay.
I heard it, and I processed that.
Okay.
And I think that's a very valid point. I just had to bring up the things I've been asking. So sharing those thoughts, I just want to put them out there. So thank you.
Any further discussion?
We're ready to vote.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiller?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
And finally, under general recommendations this evening, asking the board to consider approving classroom fee, technology fee for K through 12 students effective for the 21-22 school year as follows. Originally, we discussed a $40 fee for all students. After further discussion with committees, we decided that we would step this up to have a technology fee per student K-5 of $20 per year, in 6 through 8, $30 a year, and 9 through 12, $40 per year. Why? It was determined that the risk gets more. It's kind of, these fees will serve as like an insurance fund, if you will, to take care of the computers, help with the break fixes that may occur, as well as the refresh cycles. It's not a full reimbursement. It is a partnership, we think, with the parents, students, and taxpayers to help defray the cost of this programming for one-to-one devices. Comparative to other districts, we are very much in line, some lower, some higher. I mean, I can articulate each of the districts that we've researched in Licking County that has these fees. But we think this stepped-up approach in discussions prior to this meeting with board leadership felt that this stepped-up plan would be much more reasonable and prudent for us to consider. Therefore, I recommend it to you this evening for consideration.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
One thing I want the board to be aware of as we go to one-to-one and we, you know, the 400 that we purchased earlier, there are extra computers in that system, because when you look at computers and you one-to-one, we have students that move into our district, right? So it's not only things that are getting destroyed, but it's also, you have to have a surplus, because when you go to reorder, there's a timeline for reordering. And the board needs to recognize that the school district is growing, like we all recognize that. So the expenditure for technology is going to continue. And just be aware of the path that we're going down, that the fees help us with partially help us with some of the funding that would be required as we go forward. But I know, you know, Debbie has the numbers on how many extra we've ordered through this 400, but that's going to be a challenge that we have going forward, is how do we continue to find the funds to keep this system going? And especially as we grow as a school.
Alan, do you see in K-5, they likely would not be taking them home? Is that a
Yeah,
fair-
they're not
They will
gonna take
not.
them home
Okay,
through middle
I'm
school.
just raising the
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Okay. So 6-8, would we be taking them home?
They are not currently.
The exposures, okay. So really, 9-12 is the,
They move them back in classrooms, back and forth.
okay. I was just curious how we were going to do it.
And that's why there's that slight bump in the 6-8, just because they are moving them from classroom to classroom, so that risk just is slightly
The
elevated.
risk is greater. And,
Yeah.
okay.
And then they take them home at high school, so the risk
Sure.
is greatest there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question on, if you're going to implement a program, you should already know financially how you're going to do it as a school district before you go back to the taxpayers. The taxpayers have already provided in their taxes to the school, and the ESSER funds are taxpayer money coming back to the program, to the schools. Now we're going to ask them to pay a fee that they haven't even asked to have their kids be one-to-one. Most of the parents haven't. So how do we justify telling the parents that they're now going to be paying a fee next school year?
Well, if you're waiting for me to answer.
I don't, I'm just
I mean,
asking a question.
I don't have a good rebuttal.
I
don't know that it's a rebuttal. We're just trying to find answers.
I
don't
think,
have the answers.
and from what we hear, you get a mixed bag. We have had parents request one-to-one for several years. Is it a concerted effort where there's massive numbers coming in with requests? No, but we get increased frequency. People saying, well, I just had the computer. Why didn't the school provide the computer?
We
And so
had
many
one
other school
recently.
districts provide their computers, and some are
vocal.
willing to pay a fee. And I'm sure you're going to have a whole mixed bag of beliefs on this topic.
Absolutely.
We are trying to develop a refresh plan that would stay within the prescribed budget that we've operated on in years going forward. And I think Mrs. Seibel's done a really good job of breaking these devices out on a chart, and we're looking at that refresh cycle in a very proactive way so that we can plan budget-wise to live within our means each year. But more and more, we're seeing the trend is this is a partnership. If you're going to have one-to-one and have the opportunity to bring them home, that it is reasonable to request a fee for part of that. Fees that we saw originally were set up starting in high schools. We've seen schools that implement a fee that they get a fourth of the total cost of the computer, and they start paying that each year, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Then they just give the computer to the child at the end of the 4-year period of time, which is not out of the question for us to do as well. But you're looking at devices with maybe a 4, probably maximum 6-year life with these Chromebooks. So it's all over the place. It comes down to what's reasonable for the local taxpayers to provide on a regular basis. We certainly don't want to go back to taxpayers anytime for many, many, many years. And so we try to be very frugal in our planning. So that's not an easy question to answer, but I think it is reasonable to consider a partnership on these devices. There is a benefit to the student having one-on-one, and we operate in this philosophy in many other venues of our operation, right? We seek partnerships on purchasing equipment and things, so it's not fully on the Board of Education locally. With regard to the federal dollars, yeah, they're tax dollars. They're tax dollars that are coming to us, like it or not. And we need to find a way to effectively utilize those federal dollars to the benefit of our district. And I think we are saving our local taxpayers by using those dollars to invest at this time. So that's a few thoughts I'd
But
offer
here's
to
the
you.
thing.
So I think about it as the idea. Right, if you're gonna have a kid carry around, there's a chance you're gonna cross it. And that $40 fee or 30 or 20 comes with at least one free replacement. Like we expect a certain amount of devices. To get my kid a $400, $300 promo, and I have to pay $30 or $20 because if he drops it off the school bus or his backpack goes flying out the street, in fact, I'm gonna get a deal with it. Because I know that not every, but one in 8, that makes sense to me, I think, as a taxpayer. Now, because if you don't, your device is going to break into enforcement and say, hey, every device is great, just buy the new ones. What do we do with the kids? Like the second, the third one, and we move these policies set up is that there's some sort of graduated, like the insurance fee covers the first replacement. If the second one is damaged, it's at a 50% reduction, and after that, just to get that back up. Or it's something. Hey, here's
Intentionally.
my Chromebook.
Yeah, playing frisbee.
Right.
But that's, I guess, if I were gonna make a justification, that's you're good, you know that that $40 gives you at least one free replacement. It puts my mind at ease. We're willing to say, hey, we're gonna replace one every day anyway. And you don't have to pay people that, sure, that's absolutely.
And I don't disagree with what you said, but that's not what that says here. This says a technology fee, it doesn't say an insurance plan. And we haven't seen, is there a one free drop, let's say, I don't know. But that doesn't say that here. This says technology fee, which is going to be an annual fee. Is everybody going to have to pay this?
Everyone will pay it except for those who qualify under free lunch by state law.
And a lot
It
of
doesn't
people
pay.
in this community don't qualify for that, but yet this is going to be a hardship to pay for this possibly. I have also seen in other schools where they have the option to opt in, and if they don't opt in, they have another form that says, you know you're responsible to pay the maintenance or the repairs. Or if it's over that, unrepairable, then you're going to be buying a new one. So we haven't even seen that form. I agree, we've talked about that, but we don't have that. This is a technology fee. This isn't an insurance fee. And that's where I have a problem. I don't think this has been fully expanded out. I think it's a little bit of a rush. And if the kids are using this in the classroom K through 5, that's not an insurance claim for $20. That's a technology fee. What are you really getting with that? These kids are $20. You're not going to be able to replace a laptop in 4 years.
We do have a computer use agreement that's signed. And Debbie, I know we've discussed these very points.
I've signed the agreement.
Of the one free, and then, so we are prepared to put it in, and we're all prepared to put this in our handbooks to bring to you next month. So that's one free. neglect would be replacement at the parent's cost. I mean, if it's neglect. And we've
Well,
had one case of that.
And I understand that. It's just, it's not clear here. This says technology fee. We don't have the written words yet. And I just hate approving this without seeing the rest of the information. I have a problem. I would just like to know that it really does say what we've discussed, which is there a one-time, if it wasn't neglect, accidentally drop it, let's say. Is there a one-time drop? Is there not?
That's what we have planned to put into the existing document. We're not going to rewrite the full document.
I just
Do
think
you
that
like the idea of this being called like a insurance fee versus a technology fee?
I think it should be an insurance
Just
fee
because
that the
that-
parents have the option to opt in or not. As we signed the form this year, we're responsible for the laptop. There is no insurance, but we're responsible. If something happens to it, I'm either repairing it or replacing it.
And if they put that in the handbook, as she's just suggested, would that make it feel better for you?
I just think that parents should have the opportunity to say, yes, I'm going to pay for an insurance plan, or no, if it's an insurance plan. This says technology fee, which I don't think is the same thing. I think, I think we've got two different things going on. It's the same thing with an ATM card. When they first came out, there was no charges on them. Then they came to a charge if you used them at different banks. People figured out, oh, I can go to Kroger's, I can go to Walmart, I can pay for my groceries and then take out extra ATM. Now they're charging us to take that. Now there's a charge there. So,
No, we're not
it's
looking-
great to have a computer
Mhm.
to have in the classroom. And we've heard that this is wonderful for the kids and the students and the teachers and the time saving. But I'm just not sure that going back and asking the parents to pay a technology fee, if it's an insurance plan, okay, I'd be a little bit more, I don't have to think about that as they have the option to opt in or out.
You're trying to create a pool of funds to take care of your break fixes and replacement of computers. Okay? I described this going in as looking at it like an insurance fund. If you offered an insurance program, we looked at programs, we can buy insurance on these things. They're outrageous and they're just not worth doing. So in the spirit of creating our own, we came up with these fees. And you create that pool from which you use to replace and fix your computers over time. So it's everyone paying into that pool. I mean, we charge classroom fees for materials and supplies that are consumable. In essence, this is consumable every 4 to 6 years. We're helping, and it's a partnership to help from the general fund and parents pay for these computers, which many can go home over time. And as the risk goes up, the fee goes up. So the details with regard to the one free break fix or like you're talking about would be in the parent agreement and would be articulated in the handbook that we bring to you in May.
Would a usage be better? Would that fit it better for you and other than?
She also just wants it to be optional.
I think it should be optional for the parents, and they have to say, if they opt out of an insurance fee, then they need to sign off that they're going to pay.
My
in
issue
full.
with that is who's tracking them down if they don't fix it. That's the problem. If they don't pay, now we got a student without it. What are we going to do
Computer.
to the board? We're just going to have to give you a new one. Our whole curriculum is going to be built around it.
Yeah.
And are we going to fail a student because their parent? doesn't
Yeah, we don't
prepare
want to have
their
a kid in a
laptop?
class without a computer.
I mean, that'd be my concern if we make it optional. I don't know what other schools do. If you make it optional,
There's
they just
none.
don't fix it.
I can share with
I don't know how you
you,
handle that.
Well, the ones, if their computers are going home, then they wouldn't be allowed to take a computer home at that point.
But
They'd
we
have to-
use those in the classroom, so, what would we as a board do? I don't know that. You'd end
What
up
we're
just giving
doing
it to
now
them.
is when one is broken and do, 3 or 4, Debbie, I think, we talked about it in the technology committee, that there has been some small amount of breakage. So when that has occurred, except for the one on the stove, right? There was one that was placed on a burner on the stove. Okay, and again, we talked about all these things. So that was called negligent, right? Am I correct in my memory? Okay, that's negligent.
one was
because-
replaced.
and that they were responsible for the cost of that. But Other than that, the school has been replacing those devices at no cost to the
I would like to look further into, so Debbie, when I spoke to you before, these are about $350 to $400 with licensing, is that correct?
300.
300?
Yep.
Okay, and then,
The ones
Oh.
we just approved in H is going to be what, 275? As we said, 400 Chromebooks and licenses at a total cost of 110,000.
Best price we've had, Tim, in answer to your question, latest quote we have, $237.75 for the Dell Chromebook and $27 for the licensing fee. The total of that comes to $105,900 if we can get it that price. So we have a cushion built into 110.
so my question is, or I'd like to, it doesn't necessarily have to be with part of this motion, would be, are we assigning a new tablet in ninth grade? You get a brand new one in ninth grade. I would like to explore allowing graduating seniors to keep that tablet if they did not utilize any of our damage. You know what I mean? Like the
Right.
benefit is you get to, because it's got 5 years to it, 5 to 6. I'd like to look into that cost because I was just, if they go on to college, career, filling out resumes, things like that, if they had a laptop that they could take and they didn't utilize
Didn't utilize
insurance,
it. Yeah, I think that's a good compromise.
it'd be a compromise to where this,
Sure.
you know, the parents have paid toward that fee, didn't utilize it, and they've essentially bought, you know, a 4-year-old computer, but it's usable.
Great incentive
We talked
to
about
take
that.
good care of it.
We talked about that day too. Yeah.
Mhm.
I like that. Should we reword it or should we try?
I think if we just put that in the
that in the
handbook,
motion?
you know, as you guys look
Yeah.
through that and see what the, I'd like, you know, obviously the financial impact of doing that to us, but if we're going to be replacing them anyways, if they can keep them as part of their, I'd like that to be looked at and see what the financial impact is. Right.
Right.
It's never going to be fair until you fully implement it. I mean,
You have to start somewhere, you know?
Well, it's easy to fix, just have them pay $40 and keep it.
yeah. Pay the difference.
Pay for it.
Right.
So
pay the difference and maybe, and that's what, Deb, if you could look at those. I wouldn't want to start seniors this year though, buying because we're immediately out money and it's a 1-year-old computer. So you're going to have to look at freshmen really that low on the payment plan. I don't think you want to hand out a brand new tablet for 1 year and charge them, $160 and hand them a brand new tablet. We'd be losing $100 every time. So that's not a very good financial
Well, we
plan.
have to approve the handbooks anyway, so why don't we just approve that we're going to charge something, and then we'll see what you have in the handbooks, and if we
Yeah,
have to
that's
have
what,
more
that's what
discussion,
we
can
what
get on with
we're recommending
item
these
A.
fees tonight, and then upon approval,
Sure.
we'll do all the documentation in the document itself for the parent agreement and the parent handbook.
Mhm.
So that was
Right.
the plan. So
That we're in.
Hammer out the details.
Okay.
All right, can we call the roll?
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
No.
Mr. Swager?
Yes. Mr. Dixon?
we're into personnel items this evening. On the consent agenda, which is A through E, we see the recommendation to approve the certified staff previously introduced to you. Under item A, B, to approve or authorize the superintendent treasurer to employ 1 additional school math teacher for next year. C, to approve a 1-year contract for David Jenny as facilities manager as listed. Under item D, to approve stipends of $100 a day for 9 certified teachers to provide services for summer school kindergarten screening as we did last year. Those screenings are August 2nd and 3rd. And under item E, to approve a stipend of $100 a day for Michael Bombon, Mindy Thomas to attend summer project Lead the Way training, and that will now be paid out of the Facebook grant.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Discussion. Welcome aboard to all those folks that met us earlier.
Who are gone home.
They're sleeping now.
And they should be thanking you for moving them up on the agenda.
There you go.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Yes. Mr. Swager?
Yes. Motion carries.
And last item I recommend under personnel, item F, to authorize the employment of an English language learner teacher for the 2021-22 school year.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Oh, second.
Discussion.
Yes, I have one question, Kelly. I'm asked this several, I have been asked this several times. I want to clarify it. Is our ESL program, ELL program in compliance based on the fact that it's common knowledge that you had someone from the state come in and look at it, evaluate it, and grade our program, and it was understood that we were in compliance. Is that a true statement or not? Sorry? Well, I'm not sure it was the state. Someone who's versant with ELL programs and was advising us on how to set it up when you first came. Yeah. Oh. Okay, sorry about that. That was. We are not compliant. Okay. Well, then Facebook might have been right. I just was asking. So, great. Okay. That's all I needed to ask.
And
Any other
numbers for the
discussion?
program and all that's been given to you here too for
So we're up to like 40 some students, I think it was.
29.
29.
29 K through 12 spread out, served by Mrs. Schultz.
And do you participate in that are you considered a teacher in that program or or not? It would just be Amy and then Sherry Summers?
Sherry Summers does do family contact and helps families as well.
Okay. Okay. That helps a lot. I've learned a lot. Thank you.
So I know we've monitored this quite a bit, over the last few years. We've talked about it a lot, and so I bring it before you tonight because we do think these children need more help with language acquisition.
Could we see the progress in this after we hire this person for, let's say, a year or even whatever, whenever that appropriate time frame would be? It would be nice to see if we're making progress in this area. Are
Actually, I
more
would-
kids passing the test? I understand it's a test.
I
more of a
think
passing
it will continue to be scrutinized every year, given the numbers of students that we have to serve, as well as the effectiveness of it, Ruth Ann. We just never know what's
I
going to
know,
happen.
but given the number of students we have and then certain other factors, it's like the data you collected up here and showed
Yeah.
us tonight. Can we see how that program is working? I think it'll be important to us going down the road as we see the immigration issues affecting our school. Maybe so, maybe not. I don't know, but it would be nice to have some idea of how we're comparing. So
Sure.
I don't have a problem with hiring someone. I just wanted to know. Okay.
And then this person can be a resource for our other teachers, right? Because, you know, that's, I think, the important part that I think we're missing is most school districts, I think, has a person that's skilled in this area. And that person can be a resource for the other staff that's having to deal with these students.
Sure. We still have Mrs. Schultz performing her duties.
But she's not trained in that area.
Correct.
She can speak the language, but lacks that formal training.
Correct.
And I think that can give some guidance and insight to the rest of the staff.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great asset for our kids.
All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas? Yes. Mr. Swager?
Yes.
No
Committee
committee-
reports.
No, no.
There are no.
Additional
have
board
it.
business,
No.
new business.
No new
Almost
business.
time.
Nope.
We do have executive session.
Oh, really?
Yes.
No expected action?
No expected action. Item 5 and 6.
Oh my God, I thought you were joking.
Oh,
No.
wait a minute. I do have one more question before we adjourn. Sorry. COVID test kits. I read about it in your ed
Sure.
Oh,
briefs.
yes.
Tell me about that. I see kind of no conclusion
leave.
here. Does this go to our nurses to be?
Well, COVID test kits, I am not recommending we participate in that. I'm questioning that, as I did in the ed briefs. I'm questioning that as whether it's a role we should be doing as educators.
So you're saying maybe we don't get into this at all?
Yet,
Yeah.
yet,
Yeah, I don't think it's our place.
until it's further defined. It would certainly run through the nurses if we ever do, but documenting where it goes, sending these kits home with students with the fluid in it, just the process. If you looked at that video I sent, or that link, if you went through that, it's a nice test kit. Okay, haven't put out a nice test kit, but I just don't think it's our role.
I agree with you. I
And I'm
wanted to
concerned
find
about
out where we were
HIPAA
going.
with some of the
Did they
way this
ever-
operates.
Did they ever test kids for strep throat in school? I mean, I never was. I don't
Right.
ever remember a test that I was given at school.
Yeah, the benefit to this, and this is coming out of the State
Well, no,
Department.
for medical,
Yeah.
excuse me, for medical.
We send them home.
Yeah, Ruth Ann, it's
But
coming,
that's a good,
Yeah.
it is coming out of the
Good
State
call.
Department, and they're certainly recommending it. The kits are available. I just,
If we don't
I'm
have
just
to,
concerned-
leave it alone. I'm with you. That's 100%.
at this
yes.
point, if later we're mandated to be a distributor,
Yeah.
that's different. But
also think
I have a lot of questions.
Our numbers and spread have been low
Sure.
in comparison to a lot of others, so I just don't
Right.
see it.
Are there some conveniences with the take-home test? You get it, it's reported online, and the district can get feedback on those tests. Can that help with athletics and stuff? It's just, that's where
good.
we get into HIPAA concerns.
We're good. Can I get a motion for executive
I'll make a
session?
motion.
I'll second.
I already did. Yes.
Mr. Benton? Mrs. Stewart? Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.